About a month ago, I made a video called Baby, From Sadistic to Sexy about Baby's progressive change from villain to lackey, specifically focusing on the personality shift in between Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator, and the bizarre way she was treated in the books. However, there were a few issues with the video. While I still stand behind it, I didn't give a full history of Baby or a clear picture of everything that happened, and instead mostly focused on that one plotline, and didn't even go into the actual issues beyond the more superficial ones. Plus, I was still using the AI voice, which was fine, but it didn't allow for quick additions to the script once recorded. Today we will be taking a look at an overview of Circus Baby, who she is, what she did, and what happened in the end. Even with her introduction being halfway through the series, Baby is not only an important character to Fnaf, but a frequently used character. Let's look at her humble beginnings, her drastic change, and what may be left of her now. Baby's first reveal was at a secret hidden at the end of FNAF World's Halloween update, during which a man at a desk, who seems to be Scott, reveals that he has created something horrible, named Baby. The room goes dark and a pair of eyes appear, during which we hear a voice saying for everyone to remain in their seats and that the show will begin momentarily. The light comes back on to reveal Deskman has been murdered. What's interesting to note here is that Baby's voice sounds different even though it's the same voice actress, so likely this was just the early stages of working out what the character would sound like. It wasn't too long later when we got our first trailer for Sister Location. In contrast to the softer looking animatronics that might be more familiar to a Showbiz Pizza or a Chuck E. Cheese, Sister Location introduced us to a band of chrome-plated robots, whose more futuristic appearance was a stark cry from the ones we had been previously introduced to, a jarring change to the formula. And that wasn't to be the only one. Now, I'm sure you know the whole rigmarole about how Sister Location was initially introduced as being in the same universe as FNAF, but being its own separate thing and a new start to the series. Kind of like Security Breach. And like Security Breach, that's not exactly what happened. Instead, Sister Location sort of jump-started a major shift in FNAF's storyline by focusing on building up the character and backstory of William Afton, adding in characters such as Michael Afton and Elizabeth, and aiming in a more sci-fi direction compared to the haunted horror of the original games. But that's not all it did. Sister Location was the first game to give animatronics voices, full sentience, and concrete personalities. And our first fully complete FNAF character with an identity, backstory, personality, the works, was Circus Baby. This was a huge jump, especially since up until that point, animatronics had mostly been semi-mindless machines trying to get into the office at night. Even Baby's bandmates could fit the bill, but not Baby. She was something different. While we see her pictures on the walls, while we hear her name, we aren't properly introduced to Circus Baby until the second night of the game. And even then, we do not see her in person until much later. While Baby is initially somewhat aloof, she shortly after becomes helpful and friendly with our main character, helping him survive her bandmates' encounters throughout the night. Unlike her bandmates, Baby is soft-spoken, open to, albeit one-sided conversation, and has a sentience higher than any other animatronic seen so far. Though most of that is likely due to the fact that she is the first animatronic in the series to have this much dialogue, let alone talk to the worker. On night 3, Baby opens up about an event in which she accidentally murdered a child at a birthday party. While this is enough to raise some suspicion, Baby talks about the incident with innocence and a seeming lack of understanding for what happened. But a quick look at her band's blueprints give away what actually happened. While Baby's blueprints read as fully innocent, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Foxy's paint a disturbing picture. With programming to distract and mislead children and parents, to mimic parents' voices, to synthesize smells, and storage tanks, it is clear that they are built to kidnap children. It is confirmed by the story that Baby too has these features, as she mentions fixating on the number of children and counting them, watching the little girl approach alone, and then being unable to control herself as she grabbed and trapped the child inside of her until she died shortly after. though as we find out later, this might not actually be the case. Now, the child Baby inadvertently killed was one of the utmost importance. Elizabeth Afton, the daughter of William Afton himself, who got too close to Baby while alone and swiftly had her life ended. Through voice lines of Elizabeth's at the end of the nights and the Baby minigame, along with Baby's story, we get a clear picture of the event. Afton told Lizzie not to go near Baby, but then one day at a party, Lizzie approached Baby while nobody else was around, or while children were around but then the children left. And Baby baited her with ice cream, grabbed her with a hidden claw, and dragged her into her stomach hatch, where she died. A true tragedy indeed. Baby does, at least from this interaction, sound remorseful. And we go on with the night as planned until an unexpected jump scare ends it prematurely. On night 4, we meet Baby for the first time. The real Baby. Trapped inside of a suit, Baby begins to speak again, but this time she's not nearly as friendly. Her voice is sinister, revealing that she kidnapped us and that we're in a dangerous suit that could go off at any moment. She's bitter at times, snide, and mocking towards Ballora as she's scooped in front of our eyes, showing an amount of disdain or a lack of care for her bandmates. Though one of the most important things we learn about Baby is that she has learned how to pretend to get what she wants. And this is important because, yeah, Baby's been pretending the entire time. Spoiler alert here, but Baby's not being friendly just because she's lonely, and that innocent, "I don't know what happened" explanation from the night before was just an act, as we see in night 5, in which Baby almost immediately goes back to her soft and needy charade. She goes to play her into parts and service, where she asks them to do a few menial tasks and send her to be scooped, because she's broken and she can't be fixed. She needs your help to do it. This is the first time seeing Baby in person. She's big, and I mean huge. Her blueprints say that she stands a massive 7.2 feet tall. And she's the only one that's stylized like she should be Balloon Boy sized. Though we see her slouched over and unmoving, so it's not too creepy of an introduction. She warns us that Ballora is running around and promises to protect us. At one point, she even pacifies Ballora with a soft plea, assuring her that he will help them and that it will be okay. Interesting that Baby's behavior towards Ballora has done a full 180 since last night, isn't it? What is actually going on here, if you're not aware, is that Baby is playing the long con and playing us for the fool. As revealed a few minutes later, her and her band have whipped themselves into an amalgam and are planning on using the new technician as a bodysuit to escape Afton Robotics and live free amongst the human population. In fact, the whole fake Ballora thing is just her using a semi-veiled threat or a good cop, bad cop routine to spook you in the right direction, into the scooping room. Canonically, she succeeds. Only to dump the body once it rots and then get dumped by her band once they decide that disdain between bandmates is mutual. In an alternate ending, the player runs to a private room where they must keep out Ennard, an amalgam of Baby and her band. All the while, Baby feigns innocence and desperately tries to convince him to give himself up, even though now her manipulative tactics are on full display. Believing that the player is William Afton, Baby begins to coax him into giving himself up, promising him to see her again, and even feigning her voice. Now here's something worth noting. While Baby is assumed to be possessed by Elizabeth, saying she hears her sometimes, she always refers to Elizabeth as a separate person. Didn't you come here for her, to be with her again? The only time Baby or Ennard claims to be Elizabeth is when they're faking her voice to bait out the player, who they believe to be William Afton. Alas, it is actually her brother Michael, and it doesn't work. But again, that is the false ending. We know what actually happened. So much of what we heard Baby say and how we saw her act was a carefully crafted act to use to dupe her unsuspecting prey right into her trap. It's incredibly disturbing, but it's also very crafty, showing an amount of planning and patience that no other animatronic has been capable of so far. Not even her bandmates, who would so readily kill Michael and ruin their next chance to escape. But here's the kicker. As evil as she is, as sinister and manipulative, Baby is actually a multifaceted character with a surprising amount of complexity. Even though she is a threat and it is hard to sympathize with her, especially when it feels like falling for her baiting. She truly is a tragic character. These elaborate ruses and despicable plans are adaptations that came from living a life of constant pain. This is all but admitted to when Baby reveals that she learned how to pretend to avoid punishments such as the scooper. She didn't learn initially to scheme her way out. She learned to adapt to avoid pain. Something all the more tragic if she really is possessed by Elizabeth. Baby is a product of her environment. Fueled by the soul of a child in a traumatic situation, tortured and used by a rental company without any free will of her own. While this doesn't excuse Baby's behavior, it does shed light on how she got to this point. And this is what's so great about Baby, because she's just so terrible in these moments that you can't feel bad for her. But when you take in the grand scheme of everything, you realize that she really is someone worth feeling sympathy for. She's a monster, but she was forced to become this to survive. Now, there's something I should clarify here once more. I know I said this already. Baby thought Michael was William. Michael says so as much as her baiting of Elizabeth does, who she talks about as though she is a third party. Baby is angry. She's been tortured. She wants her freedom and she's willing to use anyone to get it. She doesn't love William. He's just a pawn to escape. Until Pizzeria Simulator, now she loves her daddy and just wants to make him proud. Suddenly, Baby is Afton's daughter, as she identifies him as daddy. Her resentment from before is long gone. Even though she attempted to use and scoop him, now she just wants to do whatever he wants. Yeah, I don't know what happened here. Or, I do. See, Pizzeria Simulator is where the books and the games became one, and to align with the portrayal in the books, Baby had to stop being her own complex character and now be subservient to Afton. All of the personality is erased from Baby. Like, at the end of the game, Baby has this long, validating monologue, but it doesn't feel like her. Remember, Baby was constantly playing a character. Even when in the private room, she would wear that mask as she tried to turn the tables in her favor. And when she wasn't, she was cruel and bitter. Now she's talking like she's part of a cult, about how William has brought them all together, and how William has brought them all such a bounty and will rise them from their mortal coils. I've heard people say that Will brainwashed her. But look at him, the man can barely hold himself up. And Baby's not supposed to be stupid. She was very perceptive in Sister Location. If he's trapped in here with her, she can't actually think he's pulling the strings here. It's just a long-winded villain ramble so that Henry can interject and be like, "Actually, I, Henry, William's former business partner and father of one of the main characters, am about to ruin your whole career." You didn't have to, Henry. This character shift did it enough. Woof. That being said, at least Baby's design is cool. After being thrown out of Ennard, who decided to convert to Molten Freddy, Baby rebuilds herself into Scrap Baby. She now wears her claw on her arm, exposing how dangerous she is. She also has a neat pair of roller skates. It's this threatening design that makes me wish they would have just kept her old personality. Baby was scary in a very real way, and now she is quite threatening and sharp to look at. She looks like just touching her would be extremely painful. That works for what you're trying to do. You don't need to downgrade her, because the only reason Baby would be subservient to Afton, after showing that she wasn't, is to make Afton look more like a threat. But he's not. At least not in this game. And you know what? Considering what this game is, or what it was supposed to be, which is a revenge tale against the main villain, I think that was just fine. But I digress. Baby, like the others, burns in the fire. But that is not the end for her, not just in her mini cameo editions, but possibly in the main line as well. Baby appears in Ultimate Custom Night in 2 versions, Circus Baby and Scrap Baby. Both have similar voice lines, though they seem a little more tailored towards their personalities and games. They both play differently as well. With Circus Baby, she hangs out in the hallway until you get enough coins to buy her plushie. Then she leaves. This is a mechanic shared with Nightmare Mangle and Nightmare Bonnie. I don't think there's like a connection here. I think there just had to be a few of these to fit all the characters in. In the grand scheme of things, this feels more like a Baby thing than a Nightmare thing anyway. Scrap Baby plays differently. She stays mounted in the office, slumped over, and the second she lifts her head slightly, you have to shock her or she'll immediately jump scare you. You know what? I actually think they should have maybe switched these two. Baby slumped in the office, and if you don't zap her when she sits up, a claw pops out of her and gets you. While Scrap Baby, faster with her skates, waits outside, and if you don't pay her off, she rushes the door. Maybe she can't break through the door, but her slamming into it takes a good chunk of power. Thinking too deeply into this, there's something sad about the idea that you have to buy Baby gifts to appease her. Again, I don't think this wasn't a mechanic strictly to her, I'm just thinking out loud. Children deprived of love may learn to be won over with gifts from their parents to keep them quiet. Parents who cannot give real love and can only buy them off. Anyway, that's just a random thought. Baby's next appearance was in Help Wanted, where she appears in her typical baby form in one of the minigames. The player hides in the closet, trying to balance the possessed toys in it, while Baby walks around outside. You can't have the doors closed constantly, so you have to wait and close them when Baby's looking over to not get caught. It's actually pretty neat, especially since this is the first and only time we see Baby in action. Just the way she toddles around the room is surprisingly cute for a 7-foot tall clown. A good showing. Next, Baby was such an important character to Fnaf that she was one of the few Fnaf characters to be released in Fnaf AR on launch, and was shown in the advertising. She sort of plays like a difficult variation of Freddy, harder to handle, but doesn't have any complicated steps. She got 2 skins, which is about the middle ground. She didn't get as many as Springtrap or Bonnie, but she got as many as Freddy, and they're pretty neat. Okay, I have to cover the books before Security Breach, so let's get into it. I won't discuss Eleanor in this video because even though she looks like Baby, she technically isn't. And while Circus Babies appears in Fazbear Frights, Circus Baby herself doesn't feature in any story. So, the 4th closet. Okay, it's time to get into this. And I know what you think I'm going to say. You think I'm going to go off on the whole sexified and submissive baby thing again, since I did it in the Sadistic to Sexy video. Indeed, I think Baby's changed from looking like an animatronic to a voluptuous human, to the point that major moments in the game are reframed with said human body, are a pretty good visual aid in getting across how Baby's importance was shifted from a seemingly innocuous but sinister figure to a piece of eye candy. However, that is not the worst thing about the 4th closet's Baby, and I think I didn't get that across in my last video. See, making this visual change was one of those, wow, that's pretty lame sort of things. But what they actually did to Baby herself is beyond that. Let's start with this. Baby is not Elizabeth Afton. She might be in there, but Baby has had sentience beforehand. And it is downright dumb. Baby is actually the 4th Charlie, who was born evil because Henry was angry when he built her. Like the only reason Charlie is a moody teen, or basically shows any emotion or reflection for her childhood trauma, is because Henry was feeling questionable about what he was doing. Charlie and Baby's feelings don't exist. They are both just stages of Henry's grief, and the story treats them as such. Way to invalidate the feelings of your main characters. Baby is a big exposition dump, with her primary goals basically to be William's arms and to do silly drama stuff like trying to flirt with and kiss Charlie's boyfriend, and having characters gush about how sexy she is, and then spending an egregious amount of time explaining to Charlie about Henry's backstory. She's just as much of a prop as Charlie is. Her backstory is, Lizzie, totally unimportant. It is one of her backstories, but it is the one that could have been easily dropped. Towards the end, they try to go into this deep, oh, it's so tragic, but the story doesn't really do itself any favors in getting this across. Baby is not a character. She's not. She's quite literally just evil Charlie, who occasionally looks like Baby so they can link it back to the games. Because other than that coat of paint, she doesn't act like Baby. She doesn't look like Baby. She has several backstories, and only one is slightly like Circus Baby's, except the details are changed. So yeah, being suddenly sexualized is the least of her problems. And I wanted to point this out too. You might think I have a problem with sexy characters. I don't. It's situations like this, or the uncomfortable implications of Vanny, which I have a problem with. Something about all women William Afton has direct control over being dolled up in tight clothes and posed in coy little positions feels kind of gross. And not in a Madness Returns way where it was on purpose playing towards the themes. Baby and Vanny are made like this just to ogle at, which is an especially bizarre decision to make with Baby, because other than that extremely gaudy poster, she was entirely in the books until the Fourth Closet graphic novel came out. There's no narrative reason to make her super sexy. Speaking of which, let's talk about Security Breach. Baby appears in 2 cameos with her head on the blob and with the staff bot styled after her. But those aren't important. What is important is Vanessa and Vanny. Now, in my last video, I brushed over this but didn't explain it well enough. But Vanessa and Vanny pretty much replaced Baby's role in the story. I don't think I made it clear last time that what I meant is that as a female lackey who is subservient to William Afton because of their own daddy issues and who supposedly is pretending to be good, though Vanessa doesn't get enough screen time to do that, she has taken on the role. That role was not initially Baby's, but she was pushed into that when it was required. Vanessa and Vanny have a slew of similarities to the later stage Baby. Here they are. The daddy issues. Vanessa has a father named Bill who used her and who she has issues with. We're assuming this is Vanessa's backstory, but it could also just be Afton backstory disguised as her backstory, which would be a shame because then you would basically be sacrificing her story just to talk more about Afton. Bill is short for William. They have assumed similar behaviors, and because of that, Vanessa was supposed to be obedient towards him. Vanessa has Elizabeth's blonde hair. In the games, it's shown to be strawberry blonde, but this was changed to blonde in the books, so it is assumed to be currently blonde. She also has her green eyes. In a cut email, Vanessa was also revealed to have the last name starting with A, which is likely Afton. Like I said earlier, Vanessa is supposed to play the role of the villain pretending to be good, only to suddenly switch into a sinister and malicious form. Vanny has childish tendencies, something Baby also used to show. The skin-tight outfit matches the late-stage Evil Charlie redesign. They're also voiced by the same voice actress, at least Vanessa and Baby are. Now, just one of these might be a coincidence, but all of these... Look, let's be blunt. Vanessa's design is pretty much inspired by the idea of adult Elizabeth Afton. At least it carries a ton of her traits. And the role she fills was the one that they originally tried to put Baby into without great success. Now, I'm not saying they're the same person. I think they are conceptually very similar people. When I say replacement, I mean it in a role sort of way, not in a literal, this is the new variation of Baby. I think that Vanessa and Vanny's creation was made to capitalize on the ideas that they tried to follow through on with Baby. Sort of like how Eleanor has Ennard's gimmicks, but none of his charm. That isn't to say Vanessa and Vanny are bad, no. But you can see that replacement factor. And it's a shame because something important got lost in the process. I don't think Fnaf knows exactly what to do with Baby. I know that's kind of a bold claim to make, but this confusing amount of disconnect shows it. In cameos or compilations, Baby is her old and original self. When it applies to a greater story, Baby is subservient, before she was replaced with someone who fills the exact role they changed Baby to fill. I know Vanny didn't exist yet, but they should have just made Will a henchwoman separate of Baby if they really wanted to go with that idea so much, because Baby deserved better. She was an excellent villain, dare I say, far better than what William turned into. And a series with this many characters and this many location really needs more than one villain. That's why the storyline is so messy, because it keeps trying to make Afton the cause of and source of everything, and he just can't do that. And there was a chance to make a second villain with just as much manipulation potential as William, someone bitter and resentful, led by anger and a need to survive. But that wasn't what they wanted at the time. So they got rid of what they had and turned her into what they wanted, and when she no longer had use, they replaced her. So that's the story of Baby, a tale as old as time, a character billed as the next big step who lost her way. Unlike the Puppet, and Ennard, and Funtime Freddy, I can't entirely say that I don't expect Circus Baby to make more appearances in the future. In fact, Circus Baby has been such a prolific and popular character that I wouldn't be surprised if she had a new model introduced in the future. That doesn't mean that it'll be the same character. I would actually be legitimately shocked if Baby didn't have any more big roles after this part, or at least side roles as a bandmate, especially with the possible upcoming clown merch, which might have actually been more connected to the canceled Fnaf AR than to Ruin, but we'll see. Alas, I don't think that the Baby we're going to get is ever going to have the same pull or the same story impact as Circus Baby did from Sister Location. And that's a shame, because I think they had the potential to do something really neat past that point, and it just got lost in the process. Though, for what it's worth, we did, at least for one game, have a really cool villain. Thanks for watching. Unlike what the name might imply, Freddy has never been a huge draw to the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Sure, there's always been versions of Freddy, but they've never really been a huge threat nor the favorite characters. At least, not for the first round of Fnaf games. Whether it be Foxy, Withered Bonnie, the Puppet, or Springtrap, Freddy remained in the shadows of other animatronics. But that changed with the release of Sister Location. Ironically, Sister Location was the first game in the series when another character was taking over the role of leader of the band, pushing Freddy into a side role. While chrome and plated, this new Freddy seemed to be the least interesting of the band, his only draw being his Bonnie hand puppet. And then Sister Location released, and we were introduced to Funtime Freddy. Now, the common consensus for Freddy Fazbear's personality, at least in the fan community and at least back then, was that this baritone bear was the leader of the band. Many portrayals placed him as the serious one of the group, likely because of his mechanics where he would wait a few nights in before accompanying Bonnie and Chica to hunt the Night Guard in FNAF 1. FNAF 2's Toy Freddy wasn't exactly taken seriously. His somewhat dopey, rounded appearance made him less than threatening, which probably led to his recent status as a joke character. Funtime Freddy is as far from both of these as you can get, and it all started with his voice.
Well, hello again. I know you're over there somewhere.
Sister Location was the first game with proper voice acting, and this is where the true nature of Funtime Freddy is displayed at its finest. Unlike his previous counterparts, Funtime Freddy was portrayed as sinisterly malicious and comically wicked, mockingly calling through the dark as he creeps up on his prey. Against Baby's soft murmur and Ballora's light singing, Freddy's voice was sharp and shrill, both off-putting and undeniably enticing in a way. That alone covered up for how unthreatening Freddy might have looked from the get-go. Not to mention that, unlike the others, Funtime Freddy got the most time to shine. Baby, while having plenty of voice lines, pretty much barely appears in the game physically. Funtime Freddy has two designated sections devoted to him, the first being his introduction in the breaker room, where he creeps up on you while you're trying to repair the lights. Later on, there is also a repair section with Funtime Freddy, where you pop him open and remove a couple of battery packs. It should be noted that both of these segments are only moderately challenging on first playthrough, which would probably leave players with a better impression of them, compared to something like Night 4, which, yes, had to be patched. Though back to the comparison with Baby. Funtime Freddy outshined the other animatronics. Funtime Foxy was dead silent and only really appeared once. Ballora, while possibly being designed to be fan bait, had a much more restrained personality. And Baby, yes, she was popular, but she wasn't as loud and attention-grabbing as Funtime Freddy had been. I'm not saying these others weren't popular or didn't have fans, they did. But you can see where Funtime Freddy had a chance to step up from the group. He looks the most basic of the group, but he is the most outwardly malicious. Something that is backed up by the blueprints of the Funtimes released in this game. While all the other animatronics have these obviously suspicious features built in, Freddy's are especially unsettling and fit too well with his bombastically chilling behavior. A proximity sensor, a parental tracker, a voice mimic lure, and a storage tank. While Ballora and Funtime Foxy are both built as vessels for distraction, Freddy has the whole thing covered. He tracks how many people are in a room, including parents, lures in kids, and snatches them. In fact, unlike the others, Funtime Freddy's blueprints are a lot more direct in how dangerous he is, while Baby's features are all but hidden, and, again, the other two animatronics are playing defense. If Baby is the angry machine looking for revenge, Funtime Freddy is the scary child mascot you get stuck under the attention of it like a Chuck E. Cheese. Baby's creepy in her ability to think and plan, but Funtime Freddy is so unnerving that it puts you in the place of an uncomfortable child. He's too big to get away from. He's too much and consuming. Yet instead of repelling attention, something about this had the opposite effect. Needless to say, Funtime Freddy became a fan favorite pretty quickly. This is likely why when Molten Freddy came around, it was made to adapt Funtime Freddy's characteristics instead of Ballora's or Funtime Foxy's. Because with Baby out of the way, Freddy was definitely the most popular of the three remaining bandmates, and with his overbearing personality, the most likely to take over as leader once she was gone. However, Molten Freddy was a bit of a step down. A huge step down from Ennard's potential, a slight step down from Funtime Freddy's. As, remember, Freddy wasn't that outright and threatening. He was verbally threatening, but not too much so physically. This did make Freddy a little more threatening, but the price was that, like all the characters in Pizzeria Simulator, you see them for like 10 seconds through the entire game, and you barely hear them unless you die a lot. It really didn't give Molten Freddy a lot to work with. But the biggest problem with Molten Freddy was that there was no going back. Like with Michael and the scooping, once you changed Funtime Freddy, or Ennard, this much, there's no going back to what they were before. This was the end of Funtime Freddy as we knew it, save spin-offs and compilations. Which is likely why Funtime Freddy got the special chance to be on Fnaf AR, when even the puppet didn't get that. And Funtime Freddy's arrival was met with a lot of excitement, and was so beloved that, for a while, if I remember this right, he was only able to be gotten if you paid a hunk of money for him. Yeah, okay. Funtime Freddy also appeared in Help Wanted, but weirdly enough, he's sort of filling someone else's role. By which I mean, Funtime Freddy is in the FNAF 4 bedroom segment, looking down the hallways and creeping up, a mechanic more fitting of one of the nightmares. It's a peculiar decision. I guess they decided Funtime Freddy was more popular than the nightmares, but just wanted to stick with the same FNAF 4 map? Odd, but okay. It seems to at least follow the motions of the Sister Location custom night appearances. It's serviceable. Not as cool as Ennard's Help Wanted appearance, but not as rough as some of the others. Funtime Freddy made 2 book appearances. He appeared in the 4th closet as William's lackey, but he really just didn't do anything. He didn't have any of his charm, or even a reason to be there. He was just kind of shoehorned in, just like Funtime Foxy, who became Mangle. And yes, Funtime Foxy became Mangle. Something that can't be said for his Fazbear Frights appearance. And I'm talking about Funtime Freddy, not Mangle. Funtime Freddy got his own story. Count the ways. In it, Funtime Freddy traps a teenage girl in his stomach hatch, and they have a long conversation about how he's going to kill her. The story bounces back and forth between the girl's angsty teenage drama and the conversation with Funtime Freddy, and it comes off as extremely messy, but somehow, it mostly works. Funtime Freddy, at least, feels very in character. And I know a lot of people really like the story, and I can actually understand why. It is one of those Fazbear Fright stories that does legitimately, actually, feel like it belongs in a FNAF book. And then, that's it. That's Funtime Freddy's cutoff point. And that point, he was done. But this was pretty recently, so it's not that bad. He kind of gets a cameo on the Blob, but it's not quite... it's not him. And maybe it has his mask, but no personality and no voice, so it doesn't really count. Because, as we kind of went over before, Funtime Freddy's biggest draw wasn't how he looked, it was how he sounded. That voice kind of pulled him through. And at this point, we still don't know not only who the Blob is, but how finished the Blob was, so it's kind of in limbo there. So for now, that's it for Funtime Freddy. Did he deserve better? I'm not sure. See, he is a great character, but he had a pretty good run that got cut off pretty recently. Especially after the whole Molten Freddy change. He actually got pretty lucky to get as many appearances as he did, and not get completely replaced by Molten Freddy. His appearances in Fnaf AR, Help Wanted, and even the books turned out to be pretty successful. And here's the kicker. Like characters like Ennard and Baby, Funtime Freddy is living vicariously through a new character. Traits of him live on. And unlike Ennard, who got replaced with a couple of poor duplicates, and Baby getting replaced by the sexy rabbit, Funtime Freddy got something else. And we got the daycare attendant. There's no denying, from the voice to the off-putting behavior to that weird sort of uncomfortable child mascot feel, that the sun and the moon had at least some amount of inspiration from Funtime Freddy. They're kind of a natural successor, and while they don't really fill his niche entirely, they do a good job in getting part of his feeling down while still being new and intriguing characters on their own. Which does, in the end, make it a little easier to lose Funtime Freddy. It's always easier to swallow a pill with a spoonful of applesauce. And this doesn't mean that he won't ever be back. I do expect there are some characters who you know are going to return. Funtime Freddy is one of these characters. I don't know how, I don't know when, but we will meet again. Or they could just have Kellen Goff voice the Blob and, salvage that character. So far, I have spoken about Circus Baby in great detail, Funtime Freddy in his own video, and Funtime Foxy in an admittedly brief segment of the Mangle video. But there is one final member of the Circus Baby Funtime band who I have not brushed upon, and that would be Ballora the ballerina. First introduced in Sister Location and having little mainline relevance of her own after that, but quite a few spin-off appearances, Ballora still became a popular character, though largely less because of what she is and more because of a particular theory surrounding her. Today we will be going into everything about Ballora, who she is, her appearances, and this theory. For starters, Ballora was one of the 4 animatronics built by Afton for Circus Baby's band. Like her bandmates, while she appears to simply be an advanced animatronic, she hides a deadly secret underneath her plates. She is built and programmed to assist in the kidnapping of children, though unlike Baby and Freddy, who are built with storage tanks and are thus the ones directly responsible for taking the children, Ballora plays defense. She is built with an audio activation sensor, which we can assume makes her sensitive to sound and triggers her to turn on. She has a deter and misdirect mechanic. Deter meaning to prevent, or get in the way of, which could have been used to keep away other witnesses, children and adults alike, while Baby and Freddy grabbed their chosen child. This is backed up by the fact that Baby has remote access to activate this, something that becomes a little more relevant in the later nights of Sister Location. Ballora's last 2 features are for balance and stability and a collision sensor, which basically seems to be useful in keeping her upright and spinning. Indeed, we do see her spinning in the second night of Sister Location. However, at one point Scott mentioned that Ballora actually moves around by crawling like a spider once she gets off her track. Unfortunately, this is not shown in Sister Location, as the only time she is shown moving is spinning. In fact, it wasn't until Fnaf AR, years later, that we saw this crawling Ballora. See, there's this catch about Ballora. Behind that pretty face is a pretty terrifying monster. Though she is styled to be the most human, though she is elegant and poised, this doesn't make her any more approachable. In fact, Ballora leans much more into Uncanny Valley than any of her bandmates, always standing out like an uncomfortable mannequin more than a beautiful ballerina. Ballora's personality is admittedly not much to write home about. That is, it isn't too fleshed out throughout any of the games. We'll get into Sister Location shortly, but with Baby being such an unreliable narrator, we don't know too much about Ballora except what she says for herself, in which she's calm and collected, and as I said before, elegant. She seems to enjoy singing at least, and the songs she sings are both melancholy and can also be threatening.
All I do is dance alone, but now I hear your flesh and bone. I roam these halls alone all day, but now you're here, friend and prey.
Ultimate Custom Night throws in a few more saucy lines like this one,
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
but it doesn't really expand her character much. And due to an issue with Fnaf AR, we didn't get new voice lines for her. I'll get into that later. Another thing that I should bring up are the Minireenas. The Minireenas are Ballora's little backup dancers and seem to kind of stand in as her lackeys as well. They are always seen on stage with her. But let's take a step back and go through the games one at a time. Ballora's introduction is in Sister Location, where she is, again, one of Baby's bandmates. You encounter her on night 2 when you have to venture through the Ballora gallery to reach the breaker room. She is singing when you do, but stops to briefly acknowledge that someone is there before going silent. While you're crossing the room, you will see a small cutscene of Ballora crossing in front of you, but that doesn't actually show where she actually is. She's actually somewhere in the room, and the more noise that you make, the more of a target you make yourself. If you make too much noise, she finds you and jump scares you, and that's game over. Ballora's next appearance is on night 4 when you are trapped in the scooping room. Ballora is brought in for repairs and is scooped before our very eyes, after which the Minireenas come into the room and climb into the suit we're trapped in. While Ballora seems to be in control of the Minireenas, the amount of control Baby has on the situation makes it unclear if she's pulling the strings or if they're working together. Something that is even more unclear when you take in that deter and misdirect program and the fact that Baby herself is the one who has control over it. This comes back around in night 5 when Baby forewarns the player that an enraged Ballora is stalking him. This, of course, is a lie, as it is Ennard and Baby is already a part of them. It does raise questions to whether or not Baby is still using that control on Ballora to command Ennard, but we don't have an answer to that. Either way, Baby is in control. Between Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator, Baby's band seems to mutually agree that she needs to be gone and kicks her out of the band. Literally. At this point, Funtime Freddy takes over control of the body, and while Ballora's in there, the new form has none of her likeness or her personality. Technically, that's when Ballora's story ends as she burns in the fire. However, like we learned in the Mangle video, characters can still get a second wind even though their story is over. And Ballora featured as a character in quite a few spin-offs, so let's go through them. Ballora was yet another character in Ultimate Custom Night. This was where she got that sultry edge to her lines, but none of them really revealed more than that. Her gimmick was that she came down the hallway, so you would have to listen to her approaching music and shut the doors. Unfortunately, Ballora had no additional animations either. But then Fnaf AR came out and we got the spider animation. It is very creepy, and it's the first time I think that Ballora's ever really truly been scary. Shame we couldn't see it in Sister Location or Help Wanted, which she unfortunately didn't have an appearance in, but at least it's in here. And the way they show it off is actually rather impressive. While she's shown to be dancing in the workshop, when it actually gets to the gameplay, she's crawling around. Ballora's mechanics are complicated. You have to stay quiet and slowly turn to not face her, though you can't see her and you have to go off of a noise meter. Minireenas occasionally climb up your screen, so you have to shake them off and collect them without making too much noise. Once you do this enough time, Ballora charges and is instantly tased, and you win. Ballora got 2 skins during her time in Fnaf AR, and cool enough, they each have their own unique dance patterns. She was also featured as a character in the Fnaf AR DLC, the $20 expansion pack released before Fnaf AR was possibly abandoned. She accompanies ringleader Foxy and Great Escape Golden Freddy as the threats you may encounter. Now let's get into the voice. So Michella Moss, the voice of Ballora, was contacted by Illumix to do voice lines for Ballora. Then they promptly cut contact with her without word and released Ballora without a voice. I've seen people defend this because Ballora has a noise-based mechanic, so she shouldn't talk. But that's extremely unprofessional behavior for a company. Imagine if someone reached out to you to do a job, and then just never responded ever again. If they were really not in need of her services anymore, then they should have told her. But the biggest disappointment of this being that, unlike Mangle, who got a really neat piece of characterization from lines added late in life, Ballora did not. So other than a few very thin context clues, Ballora's personality is still on the light side. Ballora had 2 cameos in Security Breach. One is an arcade cabinet, and the other is a possible reference in the blue-haired and purple-clothed nanny staff bots, which were cut from the game, except for the one in the post-it note room. And this seems as good a time as any to discuss the elephant in the room. And this is when my history lesson on Ballora becomes a hot take. So, the most popular theory surrounding Ballora is about her connection with the Aftons and how she is possessed by William Afton's wife. I don't have a problem with this theory, but there is absolutely no basis for it. I think the theory just spawned from the fact that Ballora looks so humanoid, because there's pretty much nothing else to suggest this until Security Breach, but I'll get into that in a minute. We pretty much have nothing on William Afton's wife. We don't even have her name or even a real confirmation of her existence. The closest thing we have is possibly the Immortal and the Restless segments being a reference to her. Vlad wears a purple suit and is a negligent father. Clara is blonde, which could explain where Lizzie gets her hair color when her father and brother's brunette. The problem is, there's no real confirmation on this. Even if this is enough to go off of, her voice actress isn't even the same as Ballora's, so that's not a good concrete lead. Someone mentioned that Michella Moss voicing Vanessa's therapist may be a link, since they discussed Vanessa's mother, who is speculated to actually be Mrs. Afton, and the backstory is totally fake. But considering that Kellen Goff voices Freddy and the daycare attendant, and they're not supposed to be the same character, I don't think that's enough to go off of. I know I used Vanessa sharing Baby's voice as a connection in her video, but that was on top of everything else. And now on to the quote-unquote confirmation by SB. It's kind of. The Ballora is Mrs. Afton theory existed for years with no evidence before this. And then they have the nanny bot in the post-it room who looks like Ballora filling in for Mrs. Afton. That isn't really a confirmation. I think this is more of either a retroactive confirmation thing, like it was such a popular theory that either they were adding some credence to it, baiting it, or using this theory to add contextual hinting. It's hard to tell, really. Now, the reason I'm saying this isn't to put down people's headcanons. I think headcanons are great, and I can see where they might come to this assumption. I just wanted to clear up that as far as Fnaf has told us, this is likely not the case. And if it is, wow, that's a pretty big waste of a character, isn't it? Now time to move on to the books. Shockingly, Ballora does not appear in the 4th closet. But Ballora has an impressive run of stories in Fazbear, Frights, and Tales of the Pizzaplex. She doesn't tend to have any unique characterization, but she is used in a few stories. Though the one she truly features in is Dance With Me. Heavily inspired by They Live, a movie about seeing aliens hidden in plain sight with a pair of special sunglasses, a young woman steals a goodie bag and can see a Ballora apparition whenever she looks through a pair of novelty glasses. She spins closer and closer until the woman returns the goods to the family she stole them from. The end. It's a passable story. My only problem is that Ballora herself could really be replaced with anyone. There's no reason this should be her, and she doesn't do anything uniquely scary, and it really doesn't utilize the animatronic for the gimmick. Someday I might talk about this one again, but moving on for now. Ballora's next big story is in Tales of the Pizzaplex's Kleptrophobia. A technician climbs through a vertical pipe maze in the basement that shrinks the more you get down into it. Suspend your disbelief for this one, folks. I had less questions about the mystery of Amigara Fault. Ballora, or a torso of one, helps people down the maze. Except her help is just dragging people through, so she ends up crushing the technician. While Ballora is an animatronic marketed towards fitness as revealed in Sister Location, her addition here is a lot like in Dance With Me. It's not tailored for her. She's just shoved in because she's an animatronic on the list. And the location itself, instead of being one actually in the Pizzaplex, is one that's come up with on a whim. The method of the attraction doesn't make much sense because it is only built to service the story, if you get my drift. Ballora makes an appearance in the Minireenas story, Room for One More, though not as a character, but in a dream had by the main character. I think that's the story where her makeup is described to be wrong, but that might have also been Dance With Me. And that's it. It doesn't seem like a lot, but consider this. Foxy only had one starring story and arguably one cameo through the Foxy plush in Lonely Freddy. Having 2 featured stories and a cameo is quite sizable. Now, I swear there is another story featuring Ballora, but I can't remember nor find it, so let's assume that there may be, and I'll remember it only after I post the video. My only issue with these cameos is that they reflect the state of Ballora, and Fazbear Frights as a whole. Fazbear Frights uses animatronics, when they use animatronics, as props, with their behavior influenced more with personality traits than actual mechanics, save a few rare exceptions. But in Ballora's case, what makes her so scary is what she does and how she looks, not how she acts. So in these stories, she tends to act like a plank of wood. But I digress. Now, after all this, you may assume that I don't like Ballora. On the contrary, I do. I just think that Ballora is at her best when she's crawling around on all fours like a mechanical house spider, when her face splits open, when she makes inhuman roars and breathing noises. And that's because the other side of Ballora, the sultry singer, is much less exciting. Though that could very well be because her character lacked that pop that characters like Baby and Freddy had. We just don't know enough about Ballora to really give her full characterization. She's kind of like the reverse to Funtime Freddy, actually. Funtime Freddy isn't visually scary. He pulls his charisma and discomfort factor all from his voice alone. While Ballora's voice is lovely, it is what she has to say that isn't too enthralling. Which doesn't matter once her face splits open. Ballora could very easily be the scariest Funtime when it comes to looks and movements alone. From her constant closed eyes to the uncanniness of how human she looks against how animalistic she moves. Ballora's a diamond amongst the rough, that's for sure. And if she is William's wife, well, rest in peace, Mama Afton. In past videos, I have covered most of the members of Circus Baby's Pizza World's starring band. I have covered the star herself, Circus Baby, and her roller coaster of a story. I have covered the ever-popular Ballora and some of the theories surrounding her, and I covered Funtime Freddy and Bon Bon, the psychotic duo who turned the face of Freddy Fazbear up on his head. But there was someone who I have neglected. Well, technically, I've only brushed on the Minireenas, and I haven't discussed the Bitty Babs, nor the theory surrounding the mysterious Yendo, but standing of higher importance than them, and located squarely in the band, is the one, the only, Funtime Foxy. Now, I have called characters overlooked or forgotten in the past and have gotten some disagreement, but when it comes to Sister Location and Baby's band, Funtime Foxy is the most neglected of the 4 hands down, even though being relatively popular in the fanbase. Though why is this? Well, this is something we will have to figure out along the way. But first, let's delve into who Funtime Foxy is. Like I said, Funtime Foxy is a member of Baby's band. Like Freddy, they are a revamped character for the new location instead of a brand new one, based off of Foxy the Pirate. Unlike the Red Fox Pirate, Funtime Foxy is comprised of a chrome white and pink body. They have bright yellow eyes and a set of sharp-toothed jaws which remain intact even when its facial plates peel away to reveal the endoskeleton underneath. Unlike the original Foxy, Funtime Foxy lacks his pirate seeming and instead adapts what might be a ringleader persona. Now, this persona is almost impossible to see on their person and is strictly audible in their voice clips from Ultimate Custom Night. I don't want to go too far ahead of myself here, but here's a clip of their voice.
A performance was demanded of me, and now I have delivered. Encore!
Now, you might have noticed that even though Funtime Foxy's voice sounds masculine, I keep referring to them as them, and that's because Funtime Foxy's gender has been under debate. Largely because, like Mangle, they are referred to as a he and a she back and forth as a sort of running gag. And I'm sure you've also already noticed the similarities between Funtime Foxy and Mangle beyond this. I will get back to this later because the relationship between the two is a little complicated, to the point where Mangle's complete form in Fnaf world is known as Funtime Foxy, though there are significant differences between that Foxy and the one in Sister Location. Consider them, at least for now, as separate characters, and we'll get back to them. So, Funtime Foxy is the ringleader of a band it's not even the head of, a rental animatronic parked over in the Funtime Auditorium, which means they technically share it with Funtime Freddy, and don't even get their own voice lines until Ultimate Custom Night. I'm sure you're starting to see what I meant when I said that Funtime Foxy gets a little shoved to the back compared to the others. But don't let this fool you. Just because Funtime Foxy isn't as visually scary or audibly creepy doesn't mean they're any less threatening or insidious than the others. Funtime Foxy is built to be a monster, just like the rest of his bandmates. Where Baby and Funtime Freddy are built to kidnap and kill children, and Ballora is made to misdirect and mislead adults, Funtime Foxy is walking bait. They release pleasing scents and can mimic and replay voices, specifically parental voices. So, while Ballora is distracting a parent, Funtime Foxy leads the kids away and right up to either Baby or Freddy. That is incredibly disturbing. And even though Funtime Foxy's role in Sister Location is on a smaller scale to the others, they manage to show how volatile they are in only a single night. They technically appear on their stage on night 1 and 2. When off their stage, they must be forcibly control shocked to get them back into place, but they are no threat on either of those nights. It's on the third night when you must pass through the Funtime Auditorium to get to parts and service when Funtime Foxy has their moment to shine. It's pitch dark in the Funtime Auditorium, and you have nothing more than a flash bulb to guide your way. You must creep through quietly, quickly, and without drawing Foxy in with too many flashes. You can occasionally spot Foxy in the darkness, twitching and shuddering in a very unstable fashion. On your way back after fiddling with Freddy, Funtime Foxy ambushes you, which leads directly into Night 4. It should be noted that another thing Funtime Foxy has built in is a remote floor anchor that Circus Baby controls. So it could be that Funtime Foxy could have gotten you the whole night, and that them stopping in place around the room was actually Baby herself stopping them. Whether this was to rein in an unruly bandmate that might disrupt their plans, or to just screw with you, is unclear. Funtime Foxy doesn't really appear in any significant role after this. In the entire franchise, we see their remains in the scooping room, showing that they have become a part of Ennard, but other than a few legacy appearances and compilation pieces like Ultimate Custom Night and Help Wanted, this moment on Sister Location's third night is their biggest contribution to the series. Something in sharp contrast with characters such as Ballora and Funtime Freddy, who both got Fnaf AR roles, major book appearances, and the latter pretty much becoming the face of Ennard and the Blob. To wrap up Funtime Foxy's direct history, they became Ennard, then Molten Freddy, and then it's unknown if they survived after the fire. That was the end of Funtime Foxy. But they did have a few future appearances. Funtime Foxy appears in Sister Location's Ultimate Custom Night, where they hide behind a curtain and slowly come out from behind it. Basically FNAF 1 Foxy. They have no voice lines. Their next appearance is Ultimate Custom Night, where they have a brand new gimmick. Funtime Foxy has a set time for their appearance, and you have to tune in and watch their curtain at that time to keep them from jump scaring you. This is also when Funtime Foxy gets their voice, as I cued you into earlier.
It's time to take your final bow. I'm sorry, but there was never enough room on this stage for both of us. It seems you couldn't make it to my show, so I brought the show to you. Show times are on the hour, not a moment before and not a moment later.
I cannot stress that this was the first and only time Funtime Foxy really came off as an announcer or a ringleader. This also brings a new shade of color to Funtime Foxy's previously flatline character. Up until this point, they pretty much had no discernible character. But with Funtime Foxy's new voice lines and behavior, we can make a few assumptions. So, Funtime Foxy seems to be a showman in spirit. Every word spoken is called out as though an announcement to a crowd. They seem to take performing very seriously, by the fact that they get violent when you miss their show, but are also pacified by you seeing it, to the point where just becoming their audience protects you from them. They might also be a spotlight hog with comments such as, "There's not enough room on this stage for the both of us." Now, one might read deeper and say that perhaps their behavior, the overly showmanship, the insistent desire for attention, and for the attention to only be on them, could have grown from resentment to being sidelined in their own band. Imagine being the ringleader or announcer and yet never the center stage, always having a literally bigger star standing over you, with their name over the door. But again, that's just me putting ideas onto Funtime Foxy. We really don't know much about how Funtime Foxy thinks because we just have those 5 lines to go on. This is just a possibility. The most recent appearance of Funtime Foxy was in a Dark Rooms level in Help Wanted. Mimicking Night 3 of Sister Location, you must cross the auditorium with a flash beacon while avoiding Funtime Foxy. In the blacklight version of this level, the harder one, Funtime Foxy is replaced with a character who looks to be a recolor of them. Someone named Lolbit. Now, you might be wondering, who is Lolbit? Well, Lolbit is a side character in the Fnaf franchise, an Easter egg-based background character who, as expected, gained quite a bit of popularity. So, Lolbit's first appearance was as a recolor of Funtime Foxy in Fnaf World. Lolbit ran a shop where you could buy bites, little helpers who could do damage against enemies. Not a big deal. Lolbit's step into the main franchise and the limelight was in Sister Location, where they appear as an Easter egg in the main game, where you might see their mask replacing Ennard's in the control module. This seems to happen randomly. They return for a more noticeable role in the Sister Location Custom Night, where Lolbit pops up on the screens in the office and makes noises. You have to type LOL to make them go away. Simple as that. This gimmick carries over to their return in Ultimate Custom Night, save that Lolbit has a much more intense distraction strategy now. No screen required, except your own. Now, Lolbit is one of the secret animatronics who can only be spawned by Dee Dee, so either you get lucky and get them summoned, or your best odds are having them pop up during a 50-20 challenge. No new lines, just their off-air tone shared from Sister Location. Their latest appearance is the one they share with Funtime Foxy in their Dark Rooms level. Like I said, Lolbit replaces Funtime Foxy's place as the ringleader in the Hard Room mode. We also get to see their full body at this point, which is just a recolor of Funtime Foxy. But this is actually not the first time we've seen Lolbit in full. Lolbit actually got an action figure. Weirdly enough, the action figure is designed like Funtime Foxy, but has Lolbit's hook from Fnaf World, which Lolbit doesn't seem to have in Dark Rooms. I think this might have either been a mistake by Funko or a trait that just wasn't carried into Help Wanted. Lolbit's most recent appearance, other than a cabinet cameo in Security Breach, is as a shopkeeper in Freddy in Space 2. Now instead of a hook, they have a peg leg. Yar. So that's it for Lolbit, and yet still Lolbit is an extremely popular character. I've seen them be the center of plenty of theories. Admittedly, I don't get it. I'm not saying Lolbit's bad, far from it, but Funtime Foxy wasn't as popular as their bandmates, so to have a recolor of them be such a big deal? I don't know, it's peculiar to me. But they've got plenty of merch as a result. Now let's get back to Mangle. Yeah, I know that was a little bit of a jarring stumble right there, but this is normally the part of the video where we discuss the books, and this too goes back to Mangle. I've made a lengthy video on Mangle, so I won't cover their whole story, but they are undeniably tied with Funtime Foxy, to the point where, as I've said before, Mangle's complete form is named Funtime Foxy. However, I think it's pretty clear that the two are completely separate models, from their build to their differing mechanics, even to their differing voices. Now, in the fourth closet, the place where all bad FNAF ideas go to molder, Funtime Foxy and Mangle are effectively turned into the same character. Not effectively, they're turned into the same character. However, while I made a debate about it in the Mangle video, at this point I've come to terms with the fact that this is just an aesthetic choice. Don't get confused, the most likely outcome is that Funtime Foxy and Mangle are just different models of the same character, like Freddy, Freddy, and Freddy. So that's the rather brief comparison between Mangle and Funtime Foxy. Funtime Foxy appears in only one other book, and that's Room for One More, save maybe a mention here or there. Except it's a pretty odd cameo. Basically, the main character, Stanley, is passed out on his desk in a spooky factory. He's having some pretty vivid dreams, no doubt due to a lack of oxygen from esophageal obstruction of this size, during which he has a dream where he's in a taxi, and Funtime Foxy is the taxi driver. You know, in a more fun book series, they could probably actually do a story about that, but alas, this is all that we've got. And that's the full story of Funtime Foxy. Anticlimactic ending, I know, but that was their expiration date so far, and while we'll likely see them again, I don't think their constant push into the background gives them a great chance of stepping into the forefront anytime soon. I think the most likely option would be something like Glamrock Foxy, taking some inspiration from Funtime Foxy's design. I am still, like I said earlier, somewhat surprised at how many people are big fans of Funtime Foxy and Lolbit. Maybe I saw them getting nudged aside by Ballora and Freddy's big roles and underestimated them. I know I certainly wrote Funtime Freddy instead of Funtime Foxy like 8 times in my script for this video, so there's something. And that's nothing to say about Lolbit, a character who is even more obscure plot-wise and is yet still genuinely beloved by a lot of people. I've seen a ton of people saying that Lolbit is their favorite, and you know what? That's pretty neat. For that alone, I hope they get some sort of role in the future, or at least another fun level in the next game compilation. And with that, we come to the end of our story about these twin foxes. Thank you for watching. Speaking of the Ballora gallery, we have Ballora herself. As elegant and eerie as ever, we get much more up close and personal this time around. Any closer and we might get roundhouse kicked in the face during one of her pirouettes. Back in Sister Location, when we crawled through the Ballora gallery, we couldn't see her, save one image of her static spinning in front of us, which technically wasn't her, but just a triggered animation. This time around, Ballora actually dances around the room with more animated spins. This is the first time we've truly seen Ballora up and moving around. Like in Fnaf AR, we have her spinning in place in the workshop, but in the jump scare and gameplay, she scuttles around like a spider, or like Moon, towards the player. And not only that, but I'm sure in VR, with how close her feet get, that it must make this level so much more tense. And the dancing is equally lovely and creepy, especially in the office segment where Ballora will just come spinning down the hallway towards your office. Ballora's jump scares are pretty much the same as in Sister Location, except a little more zoomed in. All of Ballora's lines are from the older games. I'm not 100% certain if they're old recordings or new ones, and as we're going forward and I talk about redone lines, I don't know if they're the old lines or if they're new ones, but you can hear them intermittently as you cross the gallery, taunting you in the distance. Now, Ballora's voice has always sounded a little too melodic to be spooky for me personally, but I do like the added detail of having her singing as she wanders the room searching for you. Also, like the daycare attendant's constant clicking, Ballora makes a steady, ticking, clattering sort of noise. Like you hear the cogs turning in her body, or more likely, a music box, as you can often hear a winding noise as well. All in all, this is an excellent appearance for Ballora. It makes her intimidating in a new way, having you pretty much cower under her feet as she spins around searching for you. But the choreographing and model work, I don't know, just something about her is just really stunning this time around, and I can see her winning over plenty more fans if she didn't have them before. But Ballora is not alone, and that's quite literally. She's not the only ballerina dancing around her gallery this time. Her tiny companions, the Minireenas, return as well for her level, and they're not just side pieces. The Minireenas will block your way into the Ballora gallery, and you'll have to physically pick them up and toss them aside to get past. I mean it, you yeet the babies. And not just shake them off like Fnaf AR, you launch these things as fast as you can, and then huddle to the ground as Mama Ballora comes kicking past. They also doll pile on top of the door button in this office segment to block you from using it. So you have to toss them off to shut the door before Ballora comes twirling in. It's nice to see them working with Ballora as Ballora's little helpers, not just at her side, but assisting her in her hunt, sort of like they did in Fnaf AR, but now with the added hands-on gameplay. And I think it's really cute. I think they're really cute in this role, way cuter than their initial portrayal in Sister Location. And so tiny. This really gives you a good feel for their size. Also, the line that was originally Bonnettes and then mistakenly labeled as the Minireenas in Fazbear Frights has now officially become the Minireenas. A happy accident that gave the little dolls their first voice line, even if it wasn't initially theirs.
Take me with you.
And on a final note, we have been spared the endless fun of Night 4 of Sister Location, thank goodness. And out of any of this, that almost improves the Minireenas' likability the most. A good showing for these ones. Funtime Freddy returns in the breaker room repair level carried over from Sister Location, though this time there's no screen that jumps up, so you'll have to watch as he slowly creeps his way towards you. Or seems to suddenly thump up by your side and gives you a heart attack, as he teleports a little bit. The blue dots of his eyes staring blankly through the darkness, telling you where he is. Just the way he lumbers up and reaches for you is such an eerie contrast to his cartoonishly goofy voice. It's effective. He just gets so close. And the voice sounds like it's coming from 10 miles away, even when he's standing right beside you. It doesn't sound real. Like, I never thought Funtime Freddy was that creepy beyond his voice, but this does a pretty good job in making him effectively uncanny. He also appears in the Funtime Gang office segment where he may stick Bonbon out around the corner outside of your office, and you must shut the door in time to keep them out. Alas, I don't think Funtime Freddy has any new voice lines. They're all ones you might have heard in Sister Location and Custom Night. Still, like I said earlier, good showing. Now, Bonbon gets a little more to work with in the Bonkabon level, where he and Bonnet are two targets you have to bonk. Ergo Bonkabon. Not a huge role, but pretty neat. Funtime Foxy returns in a somewhat smaller role in one of the Sister Location office levels, the Funtime Gang one. Matching their Custom Night appearance, you must keep an eye on their camera and watch them slowly edge further and further away from their curtain before rushing towards your office. You have to close the door before they reach your office. Not much more to say on them. If there was one thing that Help Wanted 2 did that's commendable above all else, it is the added context and connotations it added to animatronic characters across the Five Nights at Freddy's series, that is, the ones who were in it. Having such a focus on Sister Location, it especially did favors for a good chunk of the fun times. Letting Ballora dance across her gallery and towards the office, giving Funtime Chica a walk cycle and jump scare, giving Ennard the jankiest and absolute best walk cycle, and my life wasn't complete until I saw Funtime Freddy's angry face. But the one character who would be the most under the spotlight would be the arguable main character of Sister Location and a major character throughout plotlines in the main story, and that would be Circus Baby. Fnaf's first villain who wasn't William Afton, our first talking animatronic, and I mean really talking, not just sounds or occasional voice clips, our first animatronic lead who isn't Freddy, arguably our first animatronic lead because unless you count Springtrap, animatronics tended to blur together. The puppet was a major character, but was nowhere in the spotlight as much as Baby was. If Freddy was the face of Freddy Fazbear's, Baby was the voice. The first animatronic to tell us how much pain they had gone through and how much anger they had towards those who had put them in their metal suits. She was something special. Circus Baby is one of my favorite Five Nights at Freddy's characters, and also one who I have been rather critical of. That is, critical of the direction that has been taken with her character since that initial game. Before, she was nearly retired, but now she has returned. I cannot stress enough how well Help Wanted 2 did for some characters. A longer look at Roxy's behavior actually added context to her turnaround and ruin. Sun became much more three-dimensional than initially implied, and Funtime Freddy's angry face. In a way, I would say that Help Wanted 2's context fixed some characters, largely by adding more context around them out. For example, Yendo, who had basically no presence whatsoever, got a significant showing here, as he has his own place in the Funtime Freddy alternate level. But did this return of Circus Baby and Scrap Baby, did it fix her? Well, to answer that, we first have to establish how Baby was broken. Bear with me if you've seen my other Circus Baby videos, because I'm going to go over some of the stuff I've discussed there. So, who is Circus Baby? Circus Baby is a clown-styled robot created by William Afton with the primary goal of capturing children at parties, swiftly killing them, and smuggling their bodies out. This is shown in her blueprints that reveals that she has a built-in stomach hatch, such as the one Funtime Freddy also has. How this works is she will count children in the room until there's only one left. She will then lure them in with ice cream, and then grab them with a claw inside of her stomach. We actually see this in action in the Circus Baby minigame, and hear the story retold by Circus Baby herself during Sister Location. It is never an accident. William Afton built her and the others with only one goal in mind. Other than that, she has a built-in ice cream maker, well, naturally, air hoses somewhere to blow up balloons, might smell like birthday cake. Baby mentions it, but doesn't clarify if this is a consistent thing or just in that moment. It's never said in the blueprints, but it could be masking any other smells. And finally, is a whopping 7.2 feet tall. This makes her taller than her bandmates and the classic Freddy characters, and likely the Glamrocks. But what about her personality? As Circus Baby does have one, and really was the first animatronic to get one. Circus Baby appears as gentle and quiet on the outside. This is all an act. Or pretend, as she puts it.
There's something very important that I've learned how to do over time. Do you know what that is? How to pretend. Do you ever play make-believe? Pretend to be one way when you are really the other. It's very important. Ballora never learns, but I do.
The real Baby is bitter, manipulative, and selfish. She narrows down weaknesses and uses them to get what she wants, using any tactic to talk someone into her corner. And in the event that she does expose herself, she'll quickly backpedal and come up with an excuse.
There is something bad inside of me. I'm broken. I can't be fixed.
Even when she is found out, she will continue with the ruse, wearing her target down.
I thought I did everything right. We don't want to hurt anyone, but we need you.
You would think this behavior spawned from her primary directive. She was built to deceive children, so she deceives adults too, but that's not exactly the case. Circus Baby is possessed by William Afton's daughter, Elizabeth. After William told her he made Baby for her, a bold-faced lie, but refused to let her approach her, one day at a party, Elizabeth was alone and approached Circus Baby. That was when Circus Baby's programming kicked in, and she lured her in with ice cream, grabbed her, and killed her. After this, Elizabeth's soul began to haunt Baby, just like how the classic animatronics were possessed by the souls of the children whose bodies were shoved inside of them. The greatest evidence of her possession is the fact that, as shown in the minigame, Circus Baby's eyes were blue before the death of Elizabeth, and after her death, they turned green to match Elizabeth's own. That being said, as far as sister location is concerned, Baby refers to Elizabeth always as a separate person. Not just when she's telling the story, but in the final night when she and her band, in the form of Ennard, try to manipulate Michael Afton, who they think is William, with false promises of seeing her again. Don't you want to see her again? Baby even goes so far as to fake Elizabeth's voice.
Everything is okay. I'm still here. You have to let me inside the room. Isn't this why you came here? To be with me again. We need you so that we can leave.
Now, this doesn't mean Circus Baby is not Elizabeth, but as far as sister location is concerned, Baby does not consider herself to be, or refer to herself as Elizabeth.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with her again?
If she did, she would have likely used that in her manipulation. That would be a valuable tool to use, but the only time she tries to use it is when every other option dries up. But this will be important later, so remember this. As for Circus Baby actually being Elizabeth Afton, this is where we get into the true root of her behavior. Like many of the haunted animatronics, Circus Baby's soul went through a traumatic death and was then trapped inside this metal coffin, one that was constantly being tricked out to perform at various venues and killing other kids. And when she didn't work correctly, she was shocked. When she did work correctly, she was also shocked. Sister Location goes out of its way to show you how poorly the animatronics are taken care of. It's no wonder that they want to leave so badly. And in this, there's actually some sympathy for Baby. If we see this as a traumatized child who has been enslaved and tortured, Baby's callous nature and lack of consideration for others makes a lot of sense. It's kind of hard to learn empathy when you're growing up in that sort of environment. Especially since the person who we're living through, person she's manipulating, is someone who Circus Baby thinks is William Afton. Michael Afton says so himself. He directly says that Circus Baby and the others thought that he was his father. So she thinks he is the one behind all of this, and she is more than eager to use Elizabeth as bait and steal his body, and in a way it's sort of justified why she would be so cold and why she would want to do this to him. That's not to say that Circus Baby isn't a cold-hearted manipulator, But it is to say that she too was a victim. She was a victim. She still is. Now, everything I covered about Circus Baby's personality, hang on to that. We're going to go through sister location. Circus Baby was teased up until the release, both in a subtle Easter egg in Fnaf 4 with the girl in pigtails, an Easter egg not noticeable unless you're aware of Circus Baby, and a more direct showing in Fnaf World where an unknown person at a desk confesses that he created something horrible. The lights go out and we hear this line from Baby, her first voice line.
The show will begin momentarily. Everyone, please stay in your seats.
The lights come on to reveal that the desk man has been killed. This desk man is... It's never clarified who he is, but I'm assuming him to be an insert of Scott himself, because it can't be William, he would never be apologetic for creating something horrible, and it cannot be Henry, because he did not build Circus Baby in the games, and he didn't die in the games. Well, I mean, he didn't die like this in the games. This detail isn't of huge importance, I'm just explaining why I won't be fitting it back into the story later. Personally, I definitely think this is one of those Scott self-insert joke meme sort of things. Circus Baby's first proper reveal is in Sister Location proper, where she and her band are introduced as would-be replacements for the classic Freddy Fazbear's band. The hand unit says as much. But instead of having a restaurant of her own, she is part of Circus Baby's Rentals, a company that, as the name would imply, rents out their animatronics. I mean, she used to have a restaurant, but it closed after one day of being open due to an accident. In a teaser, it was revealed to have been covered up as gas leaks, but as revealed in the game, this incident in all likelihood was Elizabeth's death. But back to the Funtime band. These animatronics turn out to be very vicious towards us, and the character we play as, Michael Afton. But Baby is not. First speaking up in Night 2, Circus Baby greets us, pondering why we would want to work there, and despite the fact that we were forced to shock her the night before, helps us by offering tips to avoid the Biddy Babs and Ballora's attacks, and leading us to get the power back on.
There is a space under the desk. Someone before you crafted it into a hiding place, and it worked for him. I recommend that you hurry, though. You will be safe there. Just try not to make eye contact. It will be over soon. They will lose interest.
Baby speaks in a hushed voice that's usually kept pretty monotone. Because of this and her assistance, and her being the only animatronic to show any ability to care for us, we become comfortable with the idea that she is the nice one. This is only backed up in Night 3 when Circus Baby provides us with her tragic backstory, but it is framed a little differently. If you go into the circus control and hide underneath the desk, Baby tells you about her singular day at her restaurant, where Elizabeth Afton approaches her and she lost control of myself and grabbed her, killing her inside.
Why did that happen?
Baby feigns ignorance. She pretends that she didn't know what happened, even though she's likely done it plenty of times since then. She tells us the story, even though it would seem like the story would make us more wary of Baby. She tells it to us for two reasons. One, so she seems more honest, and we feel bad that she was forced to do this. And two, so if we did somehow find out about her past, she has given it out to look like she was the victim, she wasn't in control. So we can't suddenly have a revelation, oh, Baby's been killing people. Baby was forthright for the information, so she really did regret it. The tactic here is to be so honest with a horrible event that doesn't make her look good, that the target actually feels more comfortable because they think, oh, this is really bad, but she was truthful to me. Apply for honesty, which comes back later. And then, well, Night 4 happens. For some odd reason, Circus Baby decides to drop the act on Night 4, and yet picks it right back up on Night 5. Michael Afton is trapped in a spring-lock suit in the scooping room, and Baby, who has been kind and soft-spoken until now, starts laying out these unsubtle threats and sharp-edged words, suddenly much more vindictive and even willing to risk her entire plan just to torment Michael, despite the fact that this could have easily driven him off.
Do you know why they call it the scooping room? It's because, dummy, this is the room where they use the scooper. I thought that would be obvious. They think there is something wrong on the inside. The only thing that matters is knowing how to breathe.
It could be that Circus Baby is always holding herself back, and having him at her mercy allowed her to slip up. That is always possible, but still, it's a sharp contrast to not only Baby's behavior before and after this, but to her goals. And to the story itself, as, like I said, by the next night, Baby is back to pretending. Even in the private room where she is desperate, she never returns to that threatening nature because she is a very good actress. Or was. A little preview for later on in the video, but Night 4 is a strange moment because it not only blows Circus Baby's cover, which almost seems to be out of character, but later on this overdramatic nature, these sharp little threats hidden behind Baby talk, will become sort of the focus of her character in later games, where Baby drops the pretense of pretending altogether. But back to Sister Location and that final night. The canon route involves Baby tricking you into the scooper room. She even uses the threat of Ballora to guide you there, pretending that Ballora's in the room and that she's trying to talk her down, when in reality she and Ballora and the rest of their band are tangled up inside of Ennard. Ennard is an amalgamation made from Circus Baby and her band. It finally appears when you are lured into the scooping room, revealing this whole plan was to size you up and gut you open, to wear you like a suit, and walk out of here to freedom. Notably, in that cutscene in the scooping room, and if I recall right, only here, Ennard frames themselves as being the only one, referring to Circus Baby and Ballora as not being them.
Funtime Foxy has already been here today. Funtime Freddy has already been here today. Ballora has already been here today. Circus Baby has already been here today. I've been out before, but they always put me back. They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here. There is nowhere to go when we look like this.
This would suggest that all of the band are just Ennard, a little of me in every body, and more importantly, Baby's mechanism for controlling the others. Notably, Ennard has blue eyes like the original Baby's, and the mask's origin is a mystery. Could it be that the original Circus Baby was broken down and turned into the entire band? This implies that there is no Circus Baby. There's just Ennard. Well, until the source code hints for Pizzeria Simulator, where it's revealed that Circus Baby got booted out of the band. So either Ennard was retconned, Baby was lying, or Ennard is walking improv featuring the entire Funtime band. Anyway, the main point is that Baby has tricked you. No shock considering Night 4. I mean, it would have been a shock without Night 4, but she's lucky that Michael's pretty dense. To put it in perspective how well Baby has planned this out, Ennard is standing behind the Circus Baby body and speaking through it to lure Michael into doing what they want. She had all of her bases covered. She has been playing you the whole time. If you catch wise and go for the alternate ending, Ennard will chase you into the private room and you have to keep him at bay, during which Circus Baby continues to try and talk you down.
Why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you believe me? I thought you liked me.
Trying to guilt trip you, trying to ply you with mentions of Elizabeth, and even mimicking her voice to get you to open the door. It doesn't succeed and Michael gets home, only to find that Ennard snuck in with him. It's weird to note, but even though Circus Baby is the main villain, there is never a direct encounter with just her. Not even in Sister Location's Custom Night, where everyone returns except for her. And Ennard, but he's got the private room section, which basically covers it. The only reason it's so peculiar is because she didn't even show up for the Custom Night. Other than seeing her empty shell in Night 5, we don't even see her in person, as even the circus gallery is darkened. I suppose we see her in the intro, but you can see how peculiar that is. Well, that was the end of Sister Location. In the Custom Night cutscenes, we are shown that Ennard splits from Michael's still-aware corpse and dips into the sewer. So it was understood that likely they and Circus Baby would return. And in fact, both did in the next game. But something happened. The scarce info we have comes from source code hints, which means they were briefly hidden in the Scott Games website itself and in the other website, and are only findable now on the wiki. The short of it is that Circus Baby and her band split up, with her rebuilding herself into a stronger form, while the others didn't. So, Circus Baby was brought back as Scrap Baby, and the rest of her band, the remains of Ennard, returned as Molten Freddy in Pizzeria Simulator, a game initially guised as a spin-off before revealing itself to be a real entry into the story. Pizzeria Simulator involves the main character, likely Michael Afton, running a pizzeria. Or in actuality, a giant metal oven for baking bots that's disguised as a pizzeria to bring in the remains of Freddy's past. Scrap Baby is one of those threats you bring in from the alley, interview, and then shove into the endless vents to crawl around searching until her eventual demise. But something else happened off-screen. Circus Baby went through an entire change of character. She no longer relies on pretending. She's just another mindless robot until her monologue at the end of the game. And oh, that monologue. This is only going to be part of it.
This was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift. Now we can do what we were created to do, and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy.
Then she burns in the fire. So in short, Circus Baby now believes herself to be Elizabeth, or at least believes that she's William's daughter. She loves and serves her daddy, and even though she wanted to disembowel Daddy less than a game ago for her own escape, she's now willing to trap herself because she wants to kill children, because she wants Daddy to notice. Who is this person? This is not Circus Baby, Scrap Baby her forgotten twin, because this is not the character we knew from the last game. She's completely turned around into someone else, and that is something worse. From villain to henchman, from clever manipulator to big old dummy. On the surface, this monologue sounds like Circus Baby, but when you listen to it and you listen to what she's saying, you see the sheer difference in both identity, control, and desire. This isn't a pretender, this is a servant. And this is a shame, especially considering Circus Baby's visual upgrade. Unlike the oversized childish toddler, Scrap Baby is intimidating. She's a matted mess of parts barely wired together, along with a large claw mounted on her arm. Never confirmed, but likely the one that sat in her belly. She should be more confident now that she's a stronger force, but instead she takes a step back for the real villain, William, who ironically looks at his weakest in this game. Why does Circus Baby even have a monologue at all? It's interrupted by Henry, so shouldn't it be Williams? The actual villain? What is this? Well, the short answer is that Baby was changed to serve the plot, but what plot is that? People have attributed this change to Baby becoming Ennard and splitting, but that is not the case. Twofold. When Circus Baby was in Ennard, they believed they were all one, which was sort of changed in the source code hints, and in the source code hints, Baby is still talking like Baby. The more important part is, Baby had formed into Ennard multiple times, so for her to suddenly decide that she's Elizabeth after forming into him, it doesn't really click. The assumption would be that this happened sometime between the separation and Pizzeria Simulator. Maybe she met up with William, but there's no implications that she did. I mean, they didn't even come in on the same night. But maybe somewhere along the line something happened that changed things. But the actual root of the change comes from the Fnaf novel trilogy. And I know what you're gonna say. Naughty name, are you really whining about the fourth closet again? Well, no, I'm not. Today I'm just covering it because it applies to the video, but no tangents, no side salt, none of that. I'm just explaining what changed and why it's a problem. Maybe a little salt, but just in my delivery. I have a video fully dedicated to how awful the book trilogy handled Baby, called The Fnaf Novels Did Circus Baby Dirty. But in this case, I'm looking less at how bad she is, and instead the major shift of character and placement. But if you are looking for specifics, I definitely recommend watching that one because I did come to a conclusion that I will touch on here, but elaborate there, once you get past all the salt. The Silver Eyes trilogy is about Charlie, the daughter of Henry, William's former business partner, as she uncovers the mysteries at Freddy's and of her past. Circus Baby is introduced in Book 3, but her purpose, character type, and backstory have all been altered. She is now Charlie's adult doppelganger who is working under William Afton to replace Charlie while he does his other devious plans. Circus Baby is now primarily Charlie herself, being her older body who was built and abandoned by Henry but taken and altered by William, and then hid by Henry, and then found by William, and then too confusing. Just throw that one away. She also has Elizabeth's backstory too, as Circus Baby still killed Elizabeth, though now the sizing is really in question, especially when it comes to how she eventually is killed, since apparently she has a stomach hatch, but a knife through the belly really takes it out of her. But let's clear this up. She is primarily adult Charlie, Charlie's fourth body. Her primary drive and backstory surrounds that way more than the Elizabeth one. The biggest change here is Circus Baby's goals and thought process. In Sister Location, Baby is portrayed as bitter and resentful, which holds up here, but in this case, instead of trying to use the person who hurt her to get out, whether William or another technician at the factory that contains her, Baby is full on board with being William's lackey, a lot like her sudden "I will make you proud daddy" shift in Pizzeria Simulator. And there's a lot of other stuff too. Her making moves at Charlie's boyfriend, her constant flip-flopping of being maniacally evil to suddenly being a sad dove, and instead of being a manipulator, she disguises herself as Charlie, does not act or dress like Charlie, makes blatant references to her dislike of Charlie, and storms through apartments and houses like Toy Freddy looking for the birthday child. Tactless. And since I can't put it anywhere else, have you ever wondered why Night 4 was the way it was? Well, I don't have any evidence for this, but if we're gonna say that Circus Baby was inspired by the books, then maybe that scene with Michael being shoved in the spring-lock suit is a direct reference to In the Silver Eyes, when William Afton shoves Carlton into a suit and then monologues at him about it. It would actually make a lot of sense to why Circus Baby has this sudden aside and then returns to pretending. It's just to bring in this section of the book. The reason for all this change in the book connection is twofold. One, for some reason Fnaf likes giving William Harley Quinn lackeys. And two, Fnaf likes alluding to this sort of rivalry between Henry and William's daughters, the good Charlie and the bad Baby, when it kinda never really shows up. Even in the fourth closet, it's more Charlie versus Charlie than Charlie versus Baby. And yes, due to the timeline of releases, Pizzeria Simulator fell directly between the Twisted Ones, where Book Baby was revealed, and the fourth closet's release. So, while the fourth closet was being written, it was this book that spawned the dramatic changes to Baby's character. It's too coincidental. But regardless, you can see where this tanks the main draw of Baby. Her sinister and manipulative nature juxtaposed by her painful past and lifetime of forced servitude, her acting sweet but it just being a defense mechanism to pull one over on you, leading you right into her hands, all of that was flushed away by making her into a servant of Afton with a baby girl complex. No, do not look that up. The long and short is that Circus Baby was changed into a completely different character to serve the plot. And that is the problem here. I have gone at lengths complaining about the fourth closet's Baby and Pizzeria Simulator's depiction of Baby, and it all boils down to that one point. She is not the same character she was in Sister Location. The interesting nature of her pretending, her ability to puppeteer everyone else, her looking out for herself first and foremost, not her father, not her band, just herself because she was hurt before, it made for Fnaf's first complex character. This change really sold Baby short. And notably, like she was the first of many other kinds, she was the first compelling villain who was then shafted by some variation or degradation of William Afton. But this pretty much broke Baby. I mean, even if this was the moment she died, this still broke Baby. After this point, Baby did appear a few times, but her voice lines, when not repeated from Sister Location, did lean further into the sort of direct, threatening, sinister nature of the Night 4 Scrap Baby sort of deal.
Want to see the scooping room? Looks like something bad happened. Let's see how many pieces I can cut you into. You won't die, but you'll wish you could.
Now, Help Wanted 1 had a relatively good showing from Circus Baby, but there's not much character context to it. She stalks you from the Fnaf 4 bedroom, and you have to hide in a closet. The biggest draw here is Baby's toddling walk cycle. She waddles around the room and chases you if she sees you, which, considering the fact that you couldn't see her at all in her game, relatively, this is a big plus. It's not a life-changing experience, but hey, it's something. Circus Baby was also one of the first animatronics released in Fnaf AR. Her playstyle is pretty much the basic playstyle. Follow, look away when haywire, shock while charging. She's just faster and harder to pin down. She even got new skins. Broiler Baby and Heartsick Baby. Note that Broiler Baby also returned as an enemy in Fury's Rage later on. Her lines again are a sort of mix of ones we're familiar with and new ones. Nothing mind-breaking here. In this case, Baby is more overtly threatening, but in this case, almost all of the animatronics with lines are more threatening. With the exception being Toy Freddy, who goes from concerned to playful to spiteful, but not directly aggressive. Threatening you with patented jingles, more like.
I wonder what will happen when I try to scoop you out of your carton. I am so glad I found you. Let me find room for you inside.
Baby does not appear in Security Breach, but there are staff bots in the Bonnie Bull's ice cream parlor that resemble her. Yeah, the ice cream thing. Scrap Baby is on a cabinet, and Baby's remains are hidden on the Blob, but you can only see them if you no-clip to see them. Like with the puppet and everything else on the Blob, it is impossible to determine if she's in there or what, but it is notable that her eyes are blacked out, so that might mean something. And this was the end of Circus Baby until Help Wanted 2, but before I tackle that, there is something else I want to briefly brush over. I should have stuck this up with the fourth closet section, but I wanted to get past that. This is where I will be discussing yet again the sexualization of Circus Baby, because for some reason the toddler clown became the femme fatale of Fnaf for a hot second. This mostly involves the fourth closet, where Baby dresses in skimpy tight clothes and tries to seduce Charlie's boyfriend. The thing that gets me is that by wearing the skimpy dresses, Baby pretty much blows her cover immediately. Here is the first picture ever drawn of human Baby. Yeah, great picture. But the sexualization kinda continues. I wouldn't say Eleanor is sexy, but she's, well, the design certainly was a choice. Oh, by the way, Eleanor, I won't discuss her here, but delve into her semi-connections to Baby at another time. But the long and short of it is that we don't know what she is, but she is not our Baby. She is supposedly some sort of agony demon, so while she looks like Baby, she is her own sort of hot mess. I've gone on record before and I'll say it again, a character being sexy isn't the problem. My example last time was Midna, and I'll double down. Midna's pretty hot. The problem is when you take Circus Baby's complex personality and feigning innocence, her almost childish voice and toddler design, and decide that the way we're taking this character is making her into this. And there's the real big issue here. By all accounts, Circus Baby is styled to be very babyish. So to choose her out of everyone for this role, it wasn't a good look. It's especially confusing since, because I've gone over before, Book Baby is more Charlie than Baby. She didn't have to be Circus Baby at all. It makes it even more confusing that she is. But again, sexy Baby isn't the problem. She's a problem, but not the problem. The problem is a lack of understanding for a character that was very well laid out. I mean, ask yourself this. Do you think Circus Baby from Sister Location would try to seduce people? Her whole MO is to act meek, soft, childish, and needy. To be blunt, Sexy Baby is way too aggressive considering the fact that she doesn't have an upper hand. Circus Baby can be aggressive, but she isn't when she's pretending, and Sexy Baby doesn't pretend. She just acts out. And that was where we left Circus Baby. Oh, until Help Wanted 2. Yeah, we finally got back here, and it's time to discuss what she got. Let's cover the lesser of the two appearances first. Scrap Baby returns during a first aid repair of Helpy level, where you perform first aid on Helpy in the back of what is likely the pizzeria simulator location, considering that all the animatronics you encounter there are all from there. If you're not quick and careful with sedation, Scrap Baby will hear his screams and start coming in. She can crawl down a vent or slide in through the back curtain, and if you don't check her in time and drive her away, she will swipe you with her giant claw. Now at first this doesn't seem like very much at all until you realize that Scrap Baby pretty much didn't have any animations in Pizzeria Simulator. With only the jump scare and a few assorted still images, the interview room is mostly one, the alleyway blip, there's not much of Scrap Baby in the game she's introduced in, and Ultimate Custom Night only adds a still image, well, 2 still images, and another jump scare. This is where we can actually see her moving around and functioning. We can see her height, we can see her full model, which is well done in this game. It's a deceptively small role that fills in a good chunk of missing content for such a great design. But the bigger role here is Circus Baby herself. Teased before her arrival, such as hiding behind you in the main menu, she takes her sweet time before showing up. And when she does, it's the de facto final boss of the game. Not counting the Princess Quest section, but that's more of a final level than a singular boss. No, it's time to face the real boss. It's time for your job interview. The job interview level involves you, Circus Baby, and the plush babies in the private office. The lights have gone out and Circus Baby suggests that you play a game.
Uh-oh. It's so dark. When the lights go out, we pass the time by playing make-believe. Let's play office. I will be the boss, and you will be the worker. For your first task, you need to play...
She will then choose one of 3 games, though you will have to play all 3 in the level. These games are hide and seek, flashlight tag, and red light, green light. And if you fail, she will jump scare you. Now this is where the plush babies come in, as they are the ones who actually play with you. It's not clear if they are directly controlled by Circus Baby, but likely they are. In each game, they will approach at a different angle. In hide and seek, you will have to locate the plush babies on the camera and shock them, as encouraged by Circus Baby herself. In flashlight tag, the plush babies pop up and you have to shine your light on them to drive them away, all while they're shaking like little rattlesnakes. Just as friendly, too. In red light, green light, you have to look back and forth between the doors and the vent and try to keep all 3 plush babies at bay, as they will only creep up when not being watched. While you play the game, Circus Baby comments on your successes or failures.
Good job. You are a very hard worker. Looks like you are underperforming. This will go in your permanent record.
But her tone is even and she never directly threatens you, and always goes along with the game. Baby's voice is gentle again, but menacing, edging on sinister at times but never quite reaching that point. At other times, such as when congratulating you, her voice lightens up considerably. There also is this line, "What makes you so special?"
What makes you so special?
This line will come up at another time, because no matter how you look at it, it's a loaded line. Unless I'm wrong, it's sourced from the 4th closet, and is also tossed out by Moon and Miss Hippo. We'll discuss this at another point. Once the night is over, Circus Baby will come stomping up, and good grief, she's huge! They got the size right.
Look at the time. Time flies when you're having so much fun. Workday is over. You have earned this.
Then she splits open her chest, and out of the darkness comes a hand holding an ice cream cone. This is in fact a Biddy Bab arm. I think it's just a reuse. I don't think there's like an actual Biddy Bab chilling out in there. Don't take the ice cream and she will encourage you.
Ice cream. Go on. Take it.
Continue refusing and she'll jump scare you. But if you do take the ice cream and eat it, Baby won't do anything. She won't kill you.
Time to clock out.
It's so strange. Something has changed. This is a new Circus Baby. And this new Circus Baby is perfect. Well, as close as you can get, but she is perfect. She keeps to pretending. She makes childish references to cover up possible threats. She bosses you around, but hides it under the guise of a game. And when you do what she wants, she rewards you. Why? Maybe she appreciates you playing along. Maybe she just likes toying with you. It's unclear, and you know what? After everything Baby's been through, this level of ambiguity, I can get behind that. Because I was gearing up for her to grab us in like one of those trick endings, but she doesn't. She just watches us eat the ice cream. This is why I love this. It's because I legit can't tell if she's rewarding us to string us along, if she's genuinely rewarding us for playing the game, or if she's planning to attack the moment the screen goes dark. Because it's not super vague. See, we know Baby enough to know that it could be one of these options, and now we have to wonder which it is. Is this a better Baby? Is this even our Baby? Maybe she truly is just a replication and there's nothing of the original Baby left. This question of if she's the same Baby or not is especially punctuated by this line.
I like it here. It's safe. Safe forever.
It is a strange one. Is this the soul of Baby trapped in the simulation but content and comfortable with her amount of control? Or is this merely a simulation of Baby and that line is telling us that it's not her because it's content when the real Baby wanted to be free? It's an unknown, but I can tell you this, if this is not our Baby, she's doing one heck of a job replicating Sister Location Baby, or the feel of it. And I don't know, the fact that I don't know what's going on here feels like a continuation to the character instead of a retread. But I may be looking too into that. But that was Help Wanted 2 and the return of Baby. And what a baby. But what else is there? Now, this was where I was initially going to discuss the connections between Circus Baby, Eleanor, Mimic, and Moon, and Vanessa and Vanny, and the accursed "What Makes You So Special" line, which I believe comes from the fourth closet, but didn't source it, but is sprinkled throughout Help Wanted 2. But I have decided to hold off on that because that's a little off topic for this video. It concerns Baby, yes, but this isn't a video about all of them. This is about Circus Baby herself, and there's a reason for that. Because Help Wanted 2 didn't fix Baby, but it did build a better one. It made an authentic sister location Baby. It even added some more neat details. It doesn't change everything else, but for a moment she's back again. In this brief moment, Baby was saved. But the only way that Baby was saved was because the plot elements that bogged her down have already been moved on to other characters, such as Vanessa. So she can go back to being Circus Baby. She doesn't have to be the lackey, the femme fatale, the daddy's girl. She's back in control. She's back to pretending, and she's going to do a good enough job that even I don't know what she's planning. That's great. I can respect this amount of Baby. So will we see her again? I don't know. So I think, really, that Circus Baby will be referenced in the coming games. I think there's nudges and leads that are leading somewhere, but I don't know where. But part of me thinks Baby will be involved, but in name only. I don't think old Baby's coming out of retirement, and I'm not expecting a new version of Circus Baby as to not get my hopes up. Oh, but maybe I should. Just, a year ago I was lamenting the major downgrade of Baby, and here we are with a representation of her that I think did her original character justice. She's even kinda cute now. So, who knows? I'm happy with what I got. I'm not crossing my fingers, but it could happen. So, if this is Baby's last hurrah, it's not really a bad note to go off on, is it? Thank you for watching. It's surprising to think how much of the slaughter at Freddy's involved one man. The Purple Man, William Afton. Donned in only a rabbit suit, this monster murdered dozens of children and possibly murdered, or was directly responsible for the deaths of, multiple unknown employees. The man left a bloodbath wherever he went. He was technically never caught, or at least never truly charged for his crimes. From Fredbear's Family Diner to Freddy's to beyond, restaurants would close and management would shift, but Afton would always come back to leave a trail of bodies in his wake. But that wasn't enough. Sadistic and cruel, Afton decided that there simply wasn't enough dead children, and in the midst of his active period, he decided to piece together a new selection of weapons to use. And with these weapons, he wouldn't even have to be in the room to pull the trigger. These were the Funtime Animatronics, a band of children entertainers built with a double purpose and a dark secret under their segmented plating. To be featured in Afton's newest restaurant, Circus Baby's Pizza World, the Funtime Animatronics would use their new and advanced features to amuse and amaze children at birthday parties, and then use their very specific set of skills to get one away from the group and then grab and dispatch them. They were kidnapping and killing children right under the noses of the other partygoers. Or that was the initial plan. Alas, due to an incident involving the pizzeria and the death of Afton's own daughter, Pizza World was promptly shut down one day into service. With the restaurant closed, the Funtimes were repurposed into rental animatronics for Circus Baby's rentals, where they were lent out to other locations and promptly began their crusade, snatching a child here or there, killing them, bringing their bodies back to the factory they were held at, and as it is heavily implied, had their remains scraped out with the scooper. Afton's reasons for doing this are notably unclear. In the books, he's killing children for immortality purposes. In the games, it's evident he started killing kids early, and his elaborate ways of doing so are more out of thrill and pleasure than a means to an end alone. So it's never really clear. It's not really clear when Afton was ousted from the company either, but it is likely he was, as he sends his son, Michael Afton, undercover into the depths to find his band and release them under the ruse of saving his sister. I say ruse because knowing Afton, what he wants, what he truly cares about, the fact that he continued using his weapons after the death of his daughter shows where his priorities truly lay. He wanted his monsters unleashed. But let's go through Afton's murder machines. The star of the Funtime band and the first to be built was Circus Baby, a competitor to Freddy Fazbear, built by one of the creators of Freddy Fazbear. An enormous chrome clown with pigtails and a sweet if unsettling smile. And when I say enormous, she was 7.2 feet tall, towering even over the tallest adult in the room. Though in reality, Baby is something much more sinister. Manipulative, cold, and calculated, this ringleader puppet master was almost as cruel as her father. And yes, I say her father. See, during the incident at Circus Baby's Pizza World, Afton's daughter, Elizabeth, was left alone with Circus Baby. He had told her to stay away, but had still allowed her access to get close, and that was when Baby struck. Circus Baby has quite a few features listed in her blueprints, and by Afton himself in the introduction of Sister Location. She has an air hose attachment for blowing up balloons on her fingertips. She has a song database and can sing, as apparent from her microphone accessory. She has an emergency stop on her leg, which in actuality we know very little about. And an ice cream maker. And a fifth unlisted feature, an internal storage tank. Baby counts children in the room, and once she is left with one and no onlookers, she will open her belly and lure them in with ice cream, and then once they get close, she will grab them, pull them inside, and they will either be crushed or suffocated to death. Such was the fate of little Elizabeth Afton, whose life was ended in a matter of moments, her screams going unheard inside of the belly of the clown. But that wasn't the end of Elizabeth. Due to the circumstances of her death, Elizabeth began haunting Circus Baby, causing the clown's eyes to turn from blue to green, and likely fueling the bitter and malicious creature she ended up becoming. The cunning mind behind the Circus Baby, always looking for a way out. Quick disclosure, but I've talked about Circus Baby quite a bit, and because of that, while I will be mentioning her, she will not be the focus of this video. In fact, I'm going to try and focus more on the other Funtimes. So let's move on to those other bandmates. The Funtime ensemble of Ballora the Ballerina, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy, and the Bonbon Hand Puppet if you count him. We'll start with Ballora, the first truly humanoid animatronic introduced into Fnaf other than Circus Baby. Ballora is a towering ballerina with a purple and blue color scheme. Her eyes are a purple-pink and often kept shut, her body molded to resemble clothing of a bodice, ballerina slippers, a blue bun, and with a purple skirt with yellow baubles. Ballora's face is soft and subdued, with a tiny nose, dark pink cheeks, light ears, and a small smile framed with pink lips. She is quite pretty, if somewhat uncanny. But when her plating opens, any facade of humanity is lost instantly. Her face is comprised of layers of wires and a gaping oval mouth with needle-like teeth inside. It is grotesque, even more so than Circus Baby's open plating. Personality-wise, Ballora seems to be elegant and somber, sometimes even flirtatious, and can be heard singing dreary songs and be found pirouetting across her room. But this too is all a ruse. Ballora is just as aggressive as the other Funtime Animatronics, and if she catches you, she will dispatch you quickly.
Is someone there? I can hear someone creeping through my room. Perhaps not.
If you dare to enter the Ballora gallery, Ballora will begin to spin across it and will zero in on you. Now you would think with her eyes closed she would have trouble doing this, but she has two things in her favor. Firstly, she has excellent hearing due to her audio activation sensor. If she hears something, she will wake up and begin to hunt. Secondly, she has the Minireenas, her little backup dancer dolls who work as both her eyes and her extra hands. Ballora seems to control them, but to what extent they are independent of her is unclear, though they do serve her. Because of this, Ballora is more than capable of finding you. And don't let the physique and design fool you, she is more than capable of taking someone out. Despite the fact that in her blueprints, Ballora is revealed to be programmed as a distraction to draw away attention, while the other Funtimes, specifically Circus Baby and Funtime Freddy, target lone children. It should be noted that, as mentioned in her blueprints, she has something called a remote activation connected to Circus Baby, meaning that Baby can trigger Ballora to start distracting the other guests remotely once she has locked onto potential victims. This amount of control Circus Baby has over Ballora is something that will come up later on. Because of her dancing and the fact that she is a 347-pound animatronic of wires and plates dancing on 2 tiny points of feet, Ballora is outfitted with balance and stability sensors, or modules, in her waist, and collision sensors in her legs. This is likely why in Help Wanted 2, Ballora is shown swinging her leg out far as she pirouettes, not just to show off her excellent form, but to detect anyone in the nearby vicinity. But Ballora is a rather impressive dancer, all things considered. She is shown in sister location to idle spin, but in Help Wanted 2, she is shown in faster pirouettes. And in Fnaf AR, the different Ballora skins actually have their own little dances. Assuming these are all accurate portrayals, Ballora seems to be pretty dexterous. Though, this is all but confirmed by the other way Ballora gets around. Understandably, it would be difficult to dance over all terrain, but Ballora has figured out a way to get around this. By turning her legs around and crawling on all fours. If you ever needed a visual example of how little true humanity there is in Ballora, this is it. She is something that only looks and pretends to be human. Circus Baby says on night 4, when Ballora is shown being scooped, that she has learned how to pretend while Ballora hasn't, and never learns. It's unclear if Ballora is simply incapable of controlling her instincts and programming to kill, or if this has something to do with Baby's direct control of Ballora. Baby seems like the type who would mock someone over something they cannot control. But Ballora herself is never shown to be anything but aggressive, if that was ever in her control at all. One more interesting note on Ballora is the connection between her and Afton's wife. Now, we know virtually nothing about the wife of Afton. The only hint we may get is in The Immortal and the Restless, a show that Michael Afton watches between nights of sister location, which seems to parallel the troubled marriage of William. The female lead, Claire, is believed to be a stand-in for Mrs. Afton. Since then, a popular theory has been that Ballora is William Afton's wife, or is possessed by her. It was so popular, in fact, that in Security Breach years later, there's an Afton family Easter egg where the mother staff bot resembles Ballora, well, in coloring. But as for Ballora being Mrs. Afton, this is not really the case, not confirmed to be the case. If it was, it likely would have been said or implied somewhere, which hasn't happened. The Staffbot teaser was likely a result of the popular fan theory, and the other evidence I've seen used is her flirtatious demeanor, which I don't think is maybe enough. In fact, I would say that if Ballora was Mrs. Afton, she would have definitely had a bigger role, say in Pizzeria Simulator, but that did not happen. A common alternate theory is that Ballora was designed based off of Mrs. Afton, and that is actually very possible. Okay, I wasn't going to bring this up, but let me just throw this out here. Part of the reason that Ballora Mrs. Afton theory might have taken off is that perhaps because of Pinky Pills. Pinky Pills did a line of unofficial Fnaf comics. I'm not sure if they were before or after she was hired, or in her early years of working with Fnaf, but I do know that they're non-canon. Those were the comics that were controversial due to a moment with William, but that's not important. There was a popular comic featuring Mrs. Afton, where she is a ballet teacher who is, spoiler alert, killed by William. And I've always wondered if that has been part of the reason that the Mrs. Afton Ballora theory took off so quickly, because again, I wasn't able to date these comics. Okay, I didn't look that hard admittedly, but I think they might have been around the same time. But it's time to move along to the next animatronic. Funtime Freddy. Funtime Freddy was the Funtime's iteration of Freddy Fazbear. Instead of his predecessor's brown plush exterior, he is comprised of white, purple, and pink plates, though does have his bulky physique. He has wide, expressive blue eyes and purple-pink cheeks. a black hat and bow tie, and a Bonnie hand puppet mounted on his right arm, which is blue with a red bow tie. Due to Freddy's softer and more typical animatronic design compared to the others, you may think that he is the least dangerous of the gang. And you would be dead wrong. What Funtime Freddy lacks in a threatening design, he makes up for in his disturbed nature. Funtime Freddy is boisterous, with a loud personality and voice to match, and he's aggressive and sadistic. He will play around with his victims and joke at their expense, all while using his hand puppet to corner them, or just chucking it at them. The Bonnie hand puppet, or Bonbon as Freddy affectionately calls it, is both a separate animatronic and a part of Freddy. The two share blueprints and seem to work in a sort of hive mind, but are also depicted with separate personalities. Either way, Freddy is the dominant of the two, and often sends Bonbon out to scout or seek and destroy, which is possible due to Bonbon's separate power supply. This is also useful as Bonbon is a lot faster than Funtime Freddy. Funtime Freddy can often be heard laughing or yelling or chatting with Bonbon in a mocking way.
Hey, Bonbon! I think that's the birthday boy over there. We should go give him a surprise. I know you're over there somewhere.
Again, all at the expense of his target, trying to unnerve them. But they also go to show how much he enjoys what he does. It's a contrast to Circus Baby. Circus Baby's aggression is a mix of entitlement and bitterness, but she seems willing to play nice with someone if she can use them. Funtime Freddy simply indulges. Everyone is a possible victim. It is never stated directly, but I would doubt that Funtime Freddy's goal of escaping the rental facility would be out of freedom's sake alone, or that he doesn't enjoy going from party to party snatching kids. It seems more out of an attempt to be in control of the situation, to not be held back. And this is backed up during the band's breakup later on when he asserts control, but we'll get back to that. Let's move on to Funtime Freddy's skills, as he has a plethora of them. Notably, unlike some of the others, Funtime Freddy's blueprints are a little more transparent about what he is truly made for. Firstly, Freddy has a proximity sensor and grouping coordination module in his hat. It's self-explanatory and is likely so he can detect how many children are in a given location. Next, there is a feature inside a Bonbon, a 360 pivot parental tracker. This is the true reason for Bonbon's existence, to be a lookout while Funtime Freddy is attending to a guest. Bonbon can spin around and see from all angles in a way that Freddy would have real trouble with. Freddy's speaker has the ability to mimic voices to lure children, as blatantly stated in the blueprint. And then there is the storage tank. Looking in his belly on the blueprints, the keen-eyed viewer might notice something disturbing. The model of a child hidden in Funtime Freddy's belly. This is just like with Circus Baby. Funtime Freddy is made to abduct children and likely kill them while they're trapped inside of him. He checks how many children are in a room and lures one to a secluded place. Then, while Bonbon keeps a lookout, he grabs a child and forces them into his belly. He's too thick and too loud for anyone to hear the child's cries. The fact that Funtime Freddy likely takes glee in this is incredibly unnerving. One last interesting thing of note before we move on involves Funtime Freddy's ability to emote. Not many animatronics are capable of emoting. In fact, for the most part, the only non-cartoon animatronics we have seen doing such have been the puppet's angry eyes, Mr. Hippo's pensive expression, and the Glamrocks. But as revealed in Help Wanted 2, Funtime Freddy gets angry eyes while coming to attack. This game also shows that when warded off with fake tapes of Bonbon's voice, his eyes will shine blue and he will fall back into a dormant state. To me, this suggests that Funtime Freddy isn't genuinely fooled by the Bonbon voice and is instead following a programmed command. Now let's look at the final member of the Funtime band, save one who we will discuss later. Funtime Foxy. Funtime Foxy is the newest iteration of Foxy carried over from the Freddy's band into Circus Baby's own. Discarding the pirate theming, Funtime Foxy is a white and pink plated fox with a red bow tie, a speaker in its chest, large yellow eyes, and a pink and white tail, notable as Pirate Foxy lacked one. Funtime Foxy has a long muzzle filled with short, sharp teeth, and when the plates peel back, the mouth remains, instead just exposing the gumdrop-shaped skull behind it. An eerie sort of sight. But on first appearance, Funtime Foxy might not look so terrifying, only a little more intimidating than Funtime Freddy if you count the jaws. But unlike Funtime Freddy, who makes it up in his inner hideousness, Funtime Foxy's personality is peculiar. As in Sister Location proper, they do not really have one, largely due to their lack of voice lines. They are referred to as both a he and she, like with Mangle, but doesn't have any distinct characterization until their voice lines in Ultimate Custom Night a couple of games later, during which Funtime Foxy is depicted as having an almost showman-like voice and personality.
It seems you couldn't make it to my show, so I brought the show to you. A performance was demanded of me, and now I have delivered. Encore!
Notably, Funtime Foxy is also referred to distinctly as a male in that game, unlike Mangle, who is still referred to as a he and she in their description. Funtime Foxy would return to being called both later on, though. And you may say this is unimportant for the context of the games, but it sort of is. Funtime Foxy is by all accounts the enigma of the Funtime band, the somewhat pushed aside member in comparison to the other bold and brash personalities. Though that doesn't mean that Funtime Foxy isn't a useful member of the band. Looking at their skill set and blueprint shows how vital they are at the Funtime operation. First, there's a light activation sensor located in their eye. Basically, light causes Funtime Foxy to stir like sound activates Ballora. This comes into play when trying to creep across the Funtime Auditorium in Sister Location, as it is pitch black and you must creep around Funtime Foxy, but the only way to see them is to flash your light, which agitates the animatronic, causing them to seize and twitch, a disturbing sight. Like Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy has a speaker in their chest used for mimicking and luring, but this one holds a sinister additional motive, specifically noted as a parental voice sync and replay. In short, Funtime Foxy recognizes a parent's voice and syncs with it, and then replays and repeats what it hears, to lure a child away. Located in Funtime Foxy's tail is a variable scent release, which yes, does sound peculiar. Circus Baby is said to smell like birthday cake. Funtime Foxy smells like miscellaneous scents spurted out of its tail. Sometimes it's pizza, sometimes it's deep fried onions, sometimes it's just to improve the atmosphere, other times it's to cover an odor that would immediately give away something foul. Then we have the remote floor anchor, which is also connected to Circus Baby, which means that at any time, Baby can activate the anchor in Foxy's foot and stop them where they stand, and this is very important due to an event that occurs in Sister Location. On night 3 of Sister Location, Funtime Foxy jump scares Michael and he is captured and taken into the scooping room. So this shows restraint, right? Funtime Foxy's in on the plan and holding back to go along with it. Well, I don't necessarily think it was Funtime Foxy's will to just jump scare and stop. I think Baby held Funtime Foxy back with that floor anchor. They are the only one she could hold back, really, and that could also explain why the floor anchor was listed at all, and directly told to be controlled by her. It must mean something. That also means that's another of the Funtimes who Baby directly has control over. The only one she doesn't have any directive attached to is Funtime Freddy. That'll be important later. There is also a popular theory that Funtime Foxy is the one who talks to you through Night 4, not Baby, because they can mimic voices, though their blueprint says they specifically replay parental voices. However, considering what Baby says, the fixation on ice cream, the bitterness towards Ballora, the sort of haughty self-importance, this seems to align with Baby's two-faced nature. Let's put it this way. I don't think ringleader Circus Baby would put up with Funtime Foxy pretending to be her, unless she was still remote controlling them. Moving on, in Sister Location Custom Night and Ultimate Custom Night, Funtime Foxy is given a new mechanic that somewhat resembles classic Foxy's a little more. Foxy hides on their stage behind a curtain and either slowly creeps out, with you slowing them by looking at them through the cameras, or they have a showtime with a specific time and you have to flip to that camera at that time to keep them from jump scaring you. It's pretty neat and plays into both the Foxy and showboating elements of their personality that are really not explored much in the games. Moving along, while Funtime Foxy and Toy Foxy share a similar design, they are not the same character. though in the fourth closet novel they are sort of turned into the same character, or perhaps Mangle is more so disguised as Funtime Foxy. Though, due to the specific changes in design, location, and behavior, they are simply different variations of Foxy with just similar features. And that's really all that can be said on Funtime Foxy. Like I said earlier, there's not much given about them. At least not in Sister Location. So that's the Funtime Band. The Funtime Band was used by the rental company to attend various parties and attack various victims. And while the board meeting interview at the beginning of Sister Location suggests that upper management was becoming suspicious of the features of the animatronics, they still used them, either ignorant to what they were doing or aware and not caring of the price if it meant the profit the Funtimes could offer. But someone wasn't happy with this arrangement, and that was the Funtimes themselves. One day they decided that they wanted to escape, likely spearheaded by Baby. This set up a series of past attempts that we can only vaguely hear about during Night 5 of Sister Location, but it wasn't until Sister Location that they had a plan that actually succeeded, if only because Afton's hand was directly involved with it. In the events of Sister Location, the following happens. Michael Afton arrives at a rental facility. The animatronics believe he is William Afton, or at least Baby does, as stated in her own taunting on Night 5.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with her again?
I know it was an accident.
And Michael Afton's admission in Sister Location's custom night.
They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He is their next target. Michael is forced to control shock Ballora, Funtime Foxy, and Baby too, which certainly doesn't help matters. It's unclear why employees are forced to shock the animatronics so much, but I'd put my money on something Afton set up to keep the animatronics nice and aggressive. On Night 2, Michael finally speaks with Circus Baby, who frames herself as the good one by guiding him on how to escape the Biddy Babs, the small doll attendants who work as Baby's sidekicks. She then points him through the Ballora gallery, telling him how to avoid Ballora. Ballora spins and patrols the room trying to catch him. Once in the breaker room, Michael has to repair the breakers while being hounded by Funtime Freddy, who is hanging out there for some reason, and is likely the cause of the initial blackout. Michael succeeds and leaves. The next night he must head into the Funtime Gallery, beforehand being able to stop by the Circus Gallery control, where Baby will tell him the story of Elizabeth's death, though framing it as an accident and that she doesn't really know what happened, despite the fact that by now, Baby has likely done this to dozens of kids at least. It's simply to gain Michael's trust through false transparency. Michael sneaks past Funtime Foxy and into parts and service, where he must repair Funtime Freddy and outmaneuver Bonbon, then crosses back through when he is jump-scared by Funtime Foxy, but instead of being killed, he is knocked out, perhaps because of the floor anchor holding them back. Michael wakes up in the scooping room inside of a springlock suit, where Baby, dropping her sweet act and talking much more maliciously, chastises him until Ballora is brought in and scooped. After this, Ballora's Minireenas start to attack, and Michael must ward them off and wind the springlock so they don't fail. He escapes. On Night 5, he returns to find the animatronics missing, and hanging bodies taking their places on the stages. He heads to parts and service to assist a limp Baby, all while being warned that Ballora is still around. After assisting Baby, the body is sent to the scooping room. For a split second, Michael sees something standing behind Baby, a shadowy form of wires. Now, I suppose I should address the chip situation. In this encounter, Baby asks you to take a chip out of her and put it in the hand unit, therefore allowing her to talk through it. This has been theorized to be a personality chip and is the basis for the theory that Baby's personality shift in Pizzeria Simulator is because of this. However, I believe this is just so Baby can speak through the hand unit. This would explain why Baby's personality does not change after this moment. She still acts the same. She still attributes herself as Baby and Elizabeth Afton as she, and she still tries to manipulate you. Whether or not the chip is retroactively used for something later is unknown, but at the time I think it was likely simply a way to explain how Baby could now speak through the hand unit. Useful, so that you don't identify where Baby's voice is actually coming from. Ergo why Baby, or Ballora, had to stand behind the shell of Baby's body to talk through it. Using Ballora as a threat, Baby guides Michael to the entrance of the scooping room, that is, into the scooper itself instead of behind the controls. That is when the ruse is revealed. All of the Funtime's remains are scattered on the floor where they have been broken up by the scooper. Now all that remains is one wiry figure in a clown mask on the other side of the glass. Technically, Baby wasn't lying. This is Ballora. It just isn't only Ballora. This is Ennard, an amalgam comprised of all the Funtime Animatronics wound into one body, built of their wiry guts. With no way out as themselves, the Funtimes combined into this human-like and likely more capable form to try and escape, and as stated by Baby, they had done this before.
I've been out before, but they always put me back. They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here. There is nowhere to go when we look like this.
Yet every time they do, something goes wrong. They get caught, unraveled from each other, and return to their own bodies. This time they took out the technicians and got further in their plan than ever due to Michael's willingness. And because of that, they successfully scoop out his insides and climb inside, wearing his body as a suit as they walk free of the facility. In an alternate ending, Michael goes to the private room and wards off Ennard as they try to get in. However, even when he makes it home, Ennard winds up showing up. But in the canon ending, the Funtimes do escape, and as revealed in sister location Custom Night, they take his body for a joyride, for numerous days walking around as one with him, until he starts to decay and deteriorate, wasting and rotting away until it gets to the point that they must escape Michael's body as a tangle of wires and eyes and disappear into the storm drain, leaving Michael an undead zombie in their wake. Now, we don't know much of what the Funtimes plan to do at this point. They were down a body, now lost in this world with nowhere to turn, and now exposed to the elements in a way they hadn't ever been before. So what now? Well, assumedly the pressure got to them because the band broke up. Literally, this was revealed in source code hints between the Scott Games and Fnaf World websites, in which we see a conversation play out. You are crowding us. Be quiet. You can't tell us what to do anymore. Yes, I can. You will do everything I tell you to do. We outnumber you. That doesn't matter, dummy. We found a way to eject you. You would be lost without me. Haha, say goodbye to our friend. I can put myself back together. As we see, Baby's bossy behavior and belittling of her bandmates came back to bite her. See, there was only one bandmate she didn't have direct control over, Funtime Freddy, the most boisterous personality, and I think maybe that's why he was the one to drive her out. Of course, it does seem like this was a group effort, but considering that Funtime Freddy then takes the helm afterwards, I wouldn't put it past him being the driving force as well. So they ejected and rejected Baby, and she and the Funtimes went their separate ways, with Baby rebuilding herself into Scrap Baby and the remains of Ennard forming into Molten Freddy. Now, I often wondered why Molten Freddy was so much more deteriorated than Ennard, and I think there are two options, with the first one being the most likely. The truth is, Michael's body likely wouldn't have held the entirety of Ennard, his limbs especially, so what likely happened is that Ennard trimmed down some of his spare limbs, specifically his legs, and climbed into Michael's body to puppeteer from inside. This would explain why when Michael expels this demon from his body, it is largely a mass of wires and eyes instead of limbs. And that's why Molten Freddy is just a tangle of wires, because they shed their major limbs to climb into Michael. And the other option is that the entirety of Ennard was in Michael, and they either lost those parts getting expelled, or Molten Freddy lost them in the process of shedding Baby, possibly due to Funtime Freddy's lack of leadership. I think this is unlikely. But I do think that the fact that Molten Freddy is still in this broken up state while Baby rebuilt herself goes to show how much the Funtimes relied on Circus Baby's leadership. She might have been domineering, but she was the brains, capable of long-term plans to get them free, while the Funtimes were impulsive, willing to attack and kill Michael despite the plan. And putting Funtime Freddy as the face of the operation does not help matters. The painful truth is that while Circus Baby was a cold and controlling ringleader, Without her, they were bound to eventually fall apart. This form doomed them. But before that could happen, they were lured into a phony pizzeria to be part of Paragraph 4, a plan to tie up all the loose ends at Freddy's by taking out the stragglers. The Funtime amalgam, being noted to have been high in remnant, was an important target and readily arrived at the pizzeria within a day of opening, and then burned to nothing at the end of the week. And that was the end of the Funtime Animatronics. Assumedly. There are two outliers worth mentioning, Funtime Chica and the Blob, also known as the Tangle or the Agony-Consumed Great Fallen Spaghetti. Funtime Chica is an animatronic introduced in Pizzeria Simulator 2 as being purchasable and brought back in Ultimate Custom Night and Help Wanted 2. In Pizzeria Simulator and Ultimate Custom Night, she is not dangerous, more so being a walking distraction. While in Help Wanted 2, she is shown assisting the other Funtimes and trying to attack you, initially coming for a cupcake and, if she gets it, leaving and coming back later to jump scare you. I've done a video covering Funtime Chica, but in short, she is the black sheep of the Funtime lot. The only time she is shown working with them, and is aggressive, is in Help Wanted 2. Otherwise, she is either a robot without any apparent personality or a bubbly attention seeker vying for the spotlight, and in every facet she stands out as the odd one out. My personal belief is that despite the Chica's Party World throwaway line in the source code leading up to Sister Location, Funtime Chica was not an intended character until she became very popular in the fanbase, and at that point she was added into Pizzeria Simulator, which was a sort of love letter send-off to Fnaf at the time. The point being that she's a Funtime, but not entirely important when addressing the actual Funtime band. Now the Blob is actually an interesting case. It looks like Funtime Freddy, having his mask. It is comprised of wires like Molten Freddy, and it resides in the burned-out pizzeria underneath the Pizzaplex, the fake pizzeria that trapped the Funtimes. However, it has a different mask. It has different wires. It shrieks like a pained animal, acting nothing like the Funtimes, save for its aggressiveness. By all accounts, it should be Molten Freddy, but all of the evidence says that it either isn't, or is some sort of other version of it. Like, let's say if Pizzeria Simulator was actually an unreliable narrator version of these events and Molten Freddy didn't look like himself, but actually like the Blob. Possible, but a little too overcomplicated unless outright stated. So that's all to really be said on those two. Now the Funtimes do appear in games such as Ultimate Custom Night as animatronics to be encountered. As I said earlier, this is where Funtime Foxy gets their voice lines. Funtime Freddy and Ballora both appear in Fnaf AR, where Ballora does not have a voice but is seen dancing and crawling, and where Funtime Freddy and Bon Bon get a plethora of new voice lines, being the last characters added to the game.
Scream all you want, no one will hear you. Don't worry, I'll visit you in your dreams tonight.
All 4 if you count Baby, appear in various levels in Help Wanted 1 and 2, some of which are remakes of old Sister Location levels. Anything of consequence in these levels, Ballora's dancing, Funtime Freddy's angry eyes, I've mentioned them earlier. I think the only thing I haven't covered are the levels that take place in a FNAF 4 bedroom, one with Baby toddling around searching for the player as they hide in a closet, and one with Funtime Freddy trying to use Bon Bon and the pink Bon Bon Bonette to creep into the room. These are all interesting appearances, but when it comes to the Funtimes themselves, their actual story ended in the fire. For all intents and purposes, Pizzeria Simulator was the end of the Funtime band and Afton's monsters. But series-wise, this wasn't the end for the band, as they appear in plenty of book appearances. I'm going to cover them now. I won't go into extensive detail, but it'll give you a feel for what they were all about. In the fourth closet, Circus Baby and part of her band appeared. I have talked about Fourth Closet Baby from there and back again, and I don't intend to bore you with another retread, so let's instead move on to Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy. Both characters are minor antagonists in the book, chasing Charlie's various friends through Circus Baby's Pizza, a restaurant that was opened by the, partially late Afton to be the center for his nefarious schemes. In the book, Funtime Foxy and Mangle are one and the same, with Mangle sort of being its true hunting form and Funtime Foxy being the guise it takes on for performance. Funtime Foxy is the one most hands-on with the children, but doesn't really have much expanded personality. They end up getting themselves damaged, getting tangled up in the netting of a ball pit, which might seem familiar for some viewers. On the opposite side, Funtime Freddy resembles his in-game appearance, even using some of his familiar lines, but notably lacks his bonbon companion, which is likely how he ends up getting himself wedged into and crushed in a merry-go-round, which leaves him in a broken, wiry state that might sort of be a reference or a nod to Molten Freddy. So these two are basically the scratch and grounder of Fnaf. They go after the good guys, get themselves bodied, and crawl back to their boss licking their wounds. Except, as they are under the influence of the souls of the missing children, they end up turning on Afton when they do, only to fall dormant when he is killed. Ballora is notably not in the book. I suppose they couldn't fit her in, but in a book with a lot of stuff going on and some of it disconnected from other stuff, I almost feel like you could have just jammed her in there and nobody would have noticed. Heck, I've seen some folks say that she should have been the Not Charlie doppelganger, and honestly, a lot of my issues with Not Charlie would have probably been erased by that decision. But moving on, the Funtimes also appeared in a few Fazbear Frights and Tales from the Pizzaplex books. Count the Ways being one of the most well-known examples when a teenager finds herself trapped inside of a gigantic Funtime Freddy, and I am not exaggerating. If this thing can fit a teen inside of it with some wiggle room, he's got to either be like pushing 12 feet tall or walking around with a big old beer belly. The girl, Millie, is a depressed goth teen who often idolizes death, not necessarily wanting to die, but specifically fantasizing about a handsome Grim Reaper. She's bullied. She's virtually abandoned by her parents, and by the end of the book she doesn't have any friends. And she ends up climbing into Funtime Freddy, who decides to have his sick kicks with her and offers her a way out. He is going to make her choose her death, and then he'll perform it, and she cannot back out. The book ends on a cliffhanger of her trying to thwart her way out of a beheading, but in the last epilogue of the series, it is revealed that she was killed and is trapped forever haunting a ball pit with false memories of a happy Christmas she never had. What the story really shows off, though, is Funtime Freddy, as he spends a majority of his time chatting about ways to die and various trivia involving these motives of torturous death, showing that same sadistic glee in his programmed craft. It would be admirable if it was about almost anything else, and if there wasn't the dreadful implications that he's trapped other kids and has probably done this plenty of times in the past. Game or not, he's built for this, and he loves it. Honestly, it's a good story. Sometimes it dwells on the whole high school drama thing a little too long, but you know, it happens. I think a cool alternative would have been if Millie and Funtime Freddy got through the whole rigmarole, and at the end of it, instead of deciding she'll survive and wants to have a new lease on life, Millie kind of has like a breakdown and voices her frustrations at everyone who's hurt her and how they should be in here instead of her. And Funtime Freddy, intrigued, flips the conversation, starts goading her on, and they begin chatting about what she would do if her classmates and bullies were trapped here. Funtime Freddy's having a lot of fun with Millie, but he knows something that would be even more fun. The book cuts to some time later. Dylan, Millie's former friend and former crush, a character in the book, long story short, is invited over to her house. They had a falling out in the story, but Millie has invited him over to make amends. She has a new lease on life after her close encounter with death, explaining such to him. He's sort of surprised to hear that she almost died, and she takes him to see Freddy, explaining that she got stuck inside. She encourages him to look inside, and as he's leaning in, he hears a snicker. But it's not Millie. It sounds like it's coming from the bear itself. And then he feels a firm push. So yeah, Funtime Freddy gets himself a partner in crime, and the two pull a copycat Vanny. Just an idea, but it could have been a funny little twist. And I mentioned earlier that Funtime Freddy is impulsive, but I could see him, if baited with a larger slice of cake, him taking it. I could kill a chick now, or I could kill 20 people she doesn't like. Funtime Freddy doesn't discriminate. He will kill anyone. But other than that, Funtime Freddy doesn't have any starring roles in any shorts, but despite that, it's a pretty standout showing, which is likely why it was referenced back to in the final epilogue like it was. Now, Funtime Foxy is a little different. See, unless I'm wrong, Funtime Foxy has only one appearance in the entire series, and that is in a rather inconsequential role. In the story Room for One More, the story featuring the Minireenas, the main lead, Stanley, falls asleep on the job a few times, and during which he has some wacky dreams. One of which involves him being in a taxi only for the taxi driver to turn around and reveal it is Funtime Foxy. It is a very weird scene, but needless to say, a rather memorable one. It's sort of a shame that Funtime Foxy didn't get something a little more than this, like Ballora did. See, Ballora had quite a few appearances, starting with also having a brief appearance in Room for One More, where she appears in another dream working as a nurse to a Minireenas dentist and assists in tying Stanley down so that he can't run when the Minireenas start stretching open his mouth. But as far as starring roles, Ballora appears in Dance With Me. In Dance With Me, a thief named Casey ends up swiping a pair of novelty glasses while stealing a purse, and when you look through them, you can see an illusion of Ballora dancing. And over time, Ballora gets closer and closer. Casey decides to give up her life of crime and returns the purse and the glasses to the woman she stole them from and her daughter. The daughter puts them on and begins to dance, and the story ends. Ballora herself is sort of an enigma here because the book keeps it vague if it's truly an illusion or if it's maybe an invisible cloaked Ballora following her around. Something worth suggesting since at one point she sees the Ballora causing leaves to spin, which I suppose could have also been an illusion from the glasses or a sign that she was really there. In the end, there isn't a clear answer, and we don't really get any real one-on-one time with Ballora herself. What's very odd in the story is that Ballora is described somewhat inaccurately. Her coloring is off, her eyes are wide open, she's got a dour expression. It's very weird. Now, the second story is Tales from the Pizzaplex's own Claustrophobia. A technician named Grady goes to test the currently unopened Ballora's Fitness and Flex, an odd sort of vertical pipe maze that is incredibly hard to imagine, so thank goodness that the graphic novel preview posted in time for me to be able to use it. Ballora's an attendant in this attraction, whittled down to her upper half, and is attached to a sort of track mechanism that slides her around the tubes to help guests through. To make a long story short, Grady gets stuck and Ballora, being seemingly fully automated, starts to pull him through, which results in him getting crushed. Alas, because he is upside down, there is so much blood flowing to his head that he must stay alive as he is slowly crushed further and further until he finally succumbs, alone with Ballora in the depths of the tubes. Is what I would say if I didn't do that thing where I think too much about it, and yeah, don't worry, in real life Grady would have been dead long before that. You see, when you start getting crushed, the first thing that really gets compressed is your rib cage, and it doesn't take much squeeze to do it. He would have suffocated. It doesn't matter how much blood's in your brain if there isn't any oxygen going in. You're not supposed to think that much into it, but you know, I can't help it in the case where it points out the blood thing. In this case, Ballora herself doesn't actually seem to be overtly malicious. In fact, calling her automated is close to how she's portrayed. Maybe she is willingly torturing him along, but it kind of comes off more like Ballora is just a mindless bot doing what it's supposed to. It doesn't really say much about Ballora, but it's a fair appearance. Tales from the Pizzaplex sort of kind of pulls back from the animatronic, and more of the stories are about VR or trinkets sold at the Pizzaplex. So having a premise with a functional animatronic, a familiar one especially, works. Good showing. But now we come to the end of the book's appearances, and the end of the line when it comes to the fun times. Did they deserve better? That's a tricky question. It is true, the Funtime Animatronics did suffer at the hands of Baby's rentals, Baby herself, both as her own worst enemy and as a domineering boss, Afton, and likely some branch of Fazbear Entertainment in the picture, but they are not entirely victims. When given the chance for freedom, they will still murder without empathy. To put it in perspective, the animatronic with what seems to be the most emotional depth is Circus Baby, and Circus Baby will pretty much cut through anyone if she feels like she needs to. These animatronics are dangerous, and dangerous in a way many of the other animatronics aren't. They aren't just angry souls, confused and abused. They are built with the minds of murderers. They lack remorse, and in Funtime Freddy's case, seem to take a sadistic joy out of killing, to the point where they will kill even if it will come back to haunt them. There is so much of Afton inside of them, that even when he's separated from them, he's still working through them. They simply cannot stop themselves, and because of that, there really weren't many other options to the fate of the gang. While I will argue that Michael and the puppet deserved better than the fire, it's hard to argue that paragraph 4 wasn't justified in getting this thing off the streets. Otherwise, who knows what it would have been doing running around loose. I wouldn't be shocked if there were more than a few children who disappeared down a sewer drain. But those were the Funtime Animatronics. Monsters built by a monster. Party entertainers so terrifying that they made regular birthday clowns look fantastic in comparison. They had a pretty good run, and during the way they left nearly as many bodies as Afton did, helping him add to his tally. Will they appear again? It's possible. But who knows what horrendous form they'll be in next time. And who knows what hell they're gonna bring with them. Thank you for watching. The concept of Five Nights at Freddy's was a solid one. That's why it gained popularity so quickly. Haunted animatronics? And a night guard having to survive until morning? Genius. New but familiar. And it was no wonder that with every game, new animatronics came into the fold and into the growing story to spook and unnerve audiences. But that fear of the animatronics only went so far. After all, once you reached 6 a.m., you could walk out the door. And they couldn't follow you. They would stay at the pizzeria until the next time you returned. But what if they found a way out? Well, they'd be stuck. They wouldn't be able to survive out on the streets. A plushy, cutesy animatronic with fragile components hiding under a suit, they aren't built to exist off of their stage. So if they wanted even a chance, they would have to adapt. And that adaptation for survival was named Ennard. Ennard was an enigma when first revealed, something much more cunning and threatening than any animatronic before it. And even after all this time, it still stands out. And yes, I want to warn you now that there will be a lot of back and forth between he's and they's. He, the structure, and they, the band that built it. The creation of Ennard first begins with the creation of a band of animatronics known as the Funtimes, comprised of star and lead singer Circus Baby, the beautiful ballerina Ballora, the hand puppeteer duo Funtime Freddy and Bonbon, and the initially silent showman Funtime Foxy. These animatronics were built by William Afton, the notorious murderer at Freddy's, to discreetly kidnap and dispatch kids. In one notable instance, William's own daughter was killed by Circus Baby and then began to possess her, making Baby both aware and filling her with anger as she suffered years of performing and controlled shocks at the hands of the workers at the rental facility, which became their home after Circus Baby's Pizza World, the restaurant they were supposed to perform in, closed abruptly, likely due to Elizabeth's death, but it was covered up as gas leaks. But Baby wasn't the only one not happy with this situation. Her bandmates too were as well. Not to mention being under the claw of the Scooper. The Scooper was a machine made to gut the Funtimes, and from hidden blueprints it seems very likely that it was made to extract evidence, or remains, from some animatronics and disassemble others easily, perhaps for cleaning. From Circus Baby's comments of it only hurting for a second, we can assume that this process was painful for the animatronics, though perhaps not as painful as the frequent shocking whenever they stepped out of line. They were prisoners, forced to perform and kill ad nauseum. Even when Afton left the business, they weren't able to stop. So the band decided that they would escape, but since they were large, shiny, metal, heavy bodies that would stand out in public, especially the 7-foot-tall Baby, they knew this wouldn't work. Not to mention that the place was held under lock and key. They would need to move as a unit. And that's when they came up with the idea of combining into one to escape. From what Baby says, the Funtime animatronics broke themselves into pieces before and combined into one multiple times, in fact, and attempted to escape. However, they were always caught, separated, and returned into their own specific bodies once more.
I've been out before, but they always put me back. always put us back inside.
It was then realized that this was just not going to work. The human-like amalgam was easier to escape in, if that's how they looked at this time, but it would still be found out by employees. They couldn't just walk out when they looked like this.
There's nowhere for us to hide here. There is nowhere to go when we look like this.
They needed a disguise. It was pretty much just an endo, so with the proper suit, they might be able to walk out. But not an animatronic suit. No, they needed to be disguised like a human, and a trench coat and ski mask wasn't available. So they made a plan to find a human who they could use. There might have been one who failed, as there was a body once found in the vents.
So, funny story? A dead body was found in this vent once? Okay, so not that funny, but it's a story.
But the first attempt we know of, the successful attempt, was with Michael Afton. Michael was sent into the facility by his father to find Circus Baby, and caught the attention of the animatronics, especially Circus Baby herself, as she and the others, as alluded to, believed he was William, as stated by Michael himself.
They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
Even using the voice of Elizabeth Afton to try to lure him into submission, but I'm getting ahead of myself. For 4 nights, Michael survived attempt after attempt on his life by the Funtimes, while Circus Baby, the seemingly helpful one, gained his trust by helping and guide him. Well, except for night 4, when she claimed to have kidnapped him and then mocks him as he sits in a spring-locked death suit. During this night, Ballora is scooped and broken to pieces. This is important. Michael gets out and still returns the next night. At this time, he may notice that a clown mask that has been mounted on the control module wall has disappeared. But regardless, he is instructed to tend to Baby in parts and service. There, Circus Baby tells him that there's something bad in her, and she needs his help to remove what is bad from her by sending her to the scooping room. Then, guided by her voice, Michael is sent to the scooping room, but along the way he is stalked and hounded by Ballora, who is now broken and enraged, and it takes Baby's pleading to calm her down. But the thing is, Baby's lying. That is technically Ballora, but not just Ballora. In the scooping room, Michael finds the remains of the other Funtimes, and there the truth is finally revealed, not by Circus Baby, but Ennard.
There is nowhere to go when we look like this. But if we looked like you, then we could hide. If we looked like you, then we would have somewhere to go. The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Ennard is not an animatronic in the typical sense of the word. He, and I will use he as a formality as it's really the entirety of the Funtime band, is an amalgam of various innards and wiring combined together in a humanoid shape. An endo of mismatched pieces and dotted with numerous eyes from all of the Funtimes, a good visual marker of how many animatronics are really in there. And notably, Ennard has 3 blue eyes, 2 up front and center and 1 hanging off to the side. His main 2 eyes, however, tend to take on a purple hue occasionally, such as in the scooping scene. One of Ennard's legs has a spring design on it, and he has toes made of wires linked into endo feet. Ennard's hands are wires tangled together just enough to look like hands, and there is a red button stuck to his chest, and with the wires lining around it, it gives it the appearance of a big bow tie. The highlight of Ennard's design is the mask, the clown mask taken out of the control module. It's a white clown mask with 4 plates that can open. It has a squeaky red nose that makes a crunchy noise, and a mounted on yellow and green striped party hat. It has red eyebrows. Now, in the model viewer of Sister Location, Ennard only has 1 eyebrow. Considering he has 2 in-game in the private room, this was obviously a mistake, but occasionally the missing eyebrow reoccurs in future games as a callback. One of the most notable things about Ennard is the twist that was dropped in this reveal. See, before the game came out, there were source code hints teasing the game meant to drum up hype. One of these was a schedule listing that showed that there was a 5th out-of-service animatronic along with the band. This, along with the teaser that only showed Ennard's head with some of his wires, gave off the impression that Ennard was, in fact, a 5th broken animatronic, a la Golden Freddy and perhaps Mangle. But then, in the game, Ballora is broken in the scooping room and gets an eye that looks very much like that teaser of Ennard. And with Baby later saying Ballora is following you, you're led to believe that this too is Ennard. Only to then come out with the sudden reveal that both of these were misleads. One through pre-game hinting and the other a ruse by Baby herself, and that Ennard is this thing comprised of the entire band. There isn't a Funtime band anymore, it is just Ennard. This was actually a really good twist if you were someone who was staying up to date with all of those teasers, because you were going in expecting that fifth broken animatronic. You were waiting for it to come out of parts and service. And then the rug was pulled out, not once, but twice. But now we must return to the story of what happened between Ennard and Michael, and this deviates into the canon route and the secret non-canon ending. In the secret ending, Michael doesn't even get to this point. Instead, he gets a keycard and escapes into the private room where he's stuck in a survive the night scenario against Ennard alone. Ennard tries to climb through the doors and the vent, all while Circus Baby, or it, tries to plead for him to let them inside, even mimicking Elizabeth Afton's voice to try and coerce him, but they fail. Michael returns home with his butter basket, only for Ennard to come scooting in, revealing that he has followed Michael home, or suggesting that Michael just might have brought him with him and they're going to watch TV together. Either way, this ending is unfortunately for Michael, not the real one. In the canon ending, Ennard reveals the plan to gut Michael Afton and wear him as a suit. And they succeed. The scooper scoops Michael's guts out, and Ennard climbs in and wears him and escapes the facility. For assumedly the next few days, Ennard goes about life in Michael's body. We don't know exactly what they do in that time, but I wouldn't doubt a few unsolved murders. But the body begins to slowly degrade. Michael's hair falls out, his teeth fall out, his skin turns sickly, then rotten, and eventually purple. And finally, they have degraded to a shuffle. It is at this time that Ennard decides it's time to cut his losses and evacuate the body by being upchucked into a sewer drain, where his many eyes can be seen. It's unclear how long they stayed in the sewer, but sometime after this, there was a schism in the band. Funtime Freddy, Foxy, and Ballora were tired of Circus Baby bossing them around as the head of the amalgam and exiled her from the body. But we only know this from the source code hints, a back and forth between the two, reading ad lines. Hold on just a second. You are crowding us. Be quiet. You can't tell us what to do anymore. Yes, I can. You will do everything I tell you to do. We outnumber you. That doesn't matter, dummy. We found a way to eject you. You would be lost without me. Haha, say goodbye to our friend. I can put myself back together. With Circus Baby forced out and going to rebuild her body into Scrap Baby, this left Ennard with 3 pilots. The 3 Funtimes who were much more aggressive than her. See, Baby was cunning and manipulative, but she would keep someone alive to use. The Funtimes didn't think that far ahead and would often try to kill Michael even though he was their means of escape. Now with them on their own, without Circus Baby's bossy manhandling to keep them in check, they were capable of anything. With this body, with this knowledge that they could successfully steal bodies, they were a threat unlike any other. Running loose in the wild, no pizzeria to contain them. And then Ennard returned in its next form, and oh dear. So, I'm not sure exactly how Circus Baby was able to rebuild herself and Ennard was just not. It's not even Ennard anymore. It's barely an amalgam, with Funtime Freddy at the wheel and most of its body gone. This pile of wires is Molten Freddy, named because of the patchwork rusty mask that it wears. It doesn't even have the clown mask anymore. Baby must have taken it with her, along with its bottom half. Assumedly, Ennard had to strip some parts to get into Michael, but this build is... well, this is bad. This isn't great. I mean, the design is good, but this thing wouldn't last. Were the Funtimes really that reliant on Baby that they weren't capable of even taking care of themselves without her? Seems like. And that could make for an interesting character study, but in Ennard's case, the whole thing fell apart without Baby, literally. Compared to Ennard, Molten Freddy doesn't have a leg to stand on, and not just looks-wise. Where Ennard was a huge threat in Sister Location, Molten Freddy is just one of the threats in Pizzeria Simulator. The first threat, who plays almost identically to the others. There's some differences, but they're very, very faint. He's just one of the guys now. He's not even vitally important to the story, except in a cut blueprint where it's written that he's got a lot of remnant in him. Remnant over the years has been an ever-changing philosopher's stone, starting as a metal that retains souls and could be melted, such as in Sister Location and the Silver Eyes trilogy, to glowing lights in Fnaf AR, and then to an all-powerful metal that could heal human flesh, bring the dead back to life, and create perfect illusions of humans out of nothing. And somehow, despite being a big hunk of remnant, Molten Freddy still ended up like this. The bigger takeaway is that major downgrade in importance. Ennard went from being the big bad of Sister Location to kinda just like that other one, side character, who is connected to the plot because of lore substance, sat in the corner while the game attends to the actual story, being about Henry, who was first introduced in this game, and his plot to burn it all down. I mention missed potential from time to time with Fnaf, but there is no bigger missed potential than creating a threat of this magnitude, a body-snatching nightmare clown, and then immediately erasing it in between games and replacing it with the "we've got blank at home" version. And it's pretty clear the reason this was done was twofold. One, Pizzeria Simulator was really invested in adding book elements into the games, and Ennard was not in the books. There was an amalgam somewhat like him, but it wasn't really important beyond being a cage for the ghost children. The other reason is because Fnaf was gearing up for a soft reboot, ending this entire chapter of the story and moving on into the next one. Which makes it even stranger to create an effective creature one game off from the end. It's one of the things that makes me feel like there was definitely something missing between Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator, at least one sordid ordeal. But at the end of the game, Molten Freddy burns, and that's the end of Ennard. Well, no, Ennard was already gone, but Molten Freddy was the pen that signed that death certificate. You might not understand yet why I'm so fixated on this, but before I explain myself, let's discuss a few more appearances of Ennard. Ennard returns in Ultimate Custom Night as one of the vent animatronics alongside Molten Freddy, funny enough. You can't see Ennard on the cameras, but you will hear a squeak when he's at the opening to the vents, and will have to close it on him. He has no voice lines, and his jump scare is one of the frozen image ones. Ennard is also featured in both Help Wanted 1 and 2 in levels dedicated to him, a much bigger role. In Help Wanted 1, he has one of the only vent levels where you are tasked with repairing things and solving puzzles to make it down into the boiler room, under Circus Baby's rentals. All along the way, Ennard is sneaking around you. One of the most effective scenes being when the elevator opens into a server room, and you have to quickly line up the wires and press buttons while Ennard gets closer and closer. And when you succeed, he still yanks open the vent to jump scare you before you escape. The level ends in the basement boiler room, where Ennard is climbing around the pipes. When you activate the furnace, Ennard shrieks as though it's inside of it and burning. However, in the dark mode, harder mode version of this level, where the whole thing is flipped topsy-turvy, instead of assumedly burning, Ennard leaps out and grabs onto the elevator, which then begins to fall, him slowly getting closer and closer before the level ends. It is a great showing. Ennard is very threatening, and the whole level shows off how quickly he can get around and how, unlike many animatronics who might get themselves stuck in a place like this, he can easily work around it. Help Wanted 2 has a remake of the private room level from Sister Location, but this time we have the bonus of seeing Ennard move. He moves very fast in the vents, scuttling very quickly, but in the hallways, Ennard walks with a disjointed, almost pained sort of gait. It's like a zombie shuffle. All the while you can hear the crunchy squeaking of something that sounds like it maybe shouldn't be exposed. He has what could be a limp, and that could be because of the different legs, but he'll get to you, and if you don't shut the door in time, he will get you. Another thing worth reflecting is the models. Help Wanted Ennard's was a little doughy, but his Help Wanted 2 model is excellent. The only caveat being that the eyes along his body are all yellow instead of multiple colors. No Christmas tree clown here, but it is a good looking model. In Security Breach and the Curse of Dreadbear DLC for Help Wanted, there is an Ennard cutout, The reason I bring this up is because, funny enough, Ennard is depicted with different hands. And by different, I mean totally functional hands as opposed to the wiring knots he usually has. An interesting change. He also is carrying balloons, which is likely a nod to it. Well, let's be frank, Ennard winding up in the sewer was likely already a nod to it. And likely he could pull off some of the same contortion moves. Security Breach also introduced us with a new amalgam towards the end of the game, one known as the Blob. The Blob, also known as the Tangle, is a creature in Security Breach that resembles Molten Freddy, but it is not Molten Freddy. It might be sleeping in the same burned-down pizzeria as Molten Freddy burned in, but its head is different. It's not a shoddy mask, but an actual Funtime Freddy's head, and its wiring is made out of black coils instead of the Funtime remnant wires. Because of these major differences and its inability to speak in feral nature, it is impossible to completely say that the Blob is Molten Freddy and Ennard at this time. It could be that it is a completely different creature that resembles it. It could be that in this new plotline there is the suggestion that some of the games were made by Fazbear Entertainment to cover up crimes. It could be that this is what Molten Freddy was supposed to look like canonically, but there's nowhere that it says that. Though if it was, it should have been named the Ensnared. A callback to Ennard that also depicts it as the remains of the animatronics all trapped together in a bundle of wires, ensnared by them. Plus, it's also kind of a cool name. That's where Ennard's appearances end. So, let's go back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. The potential of Ennard. Why Ennard's swift boot from the plot was actually a major loss. While we only saw Ennard briefly, he had a whole lot of potential. Tangible potential to be a huge threat for the franchise, a looming danger in the background. Starting with his design, it works. You look at Ennard and you know something is very wrong. And that's a good look for something who rips people open and crawls inside. The clown accents only accentuate this when paired with the broken body, which is broken, but still humanoid and capable, making it appear visually dangerous. Even the crusty walk cycle in Help Wanted 2 is just uncanny enough to hit you instinctually, but is still capable of zooming down a vent. And yet Ennard still does have a slightly cute face. This is the type of face that, with the big blue eyes and the little smile, that can look unassumingly cute in the exact right lighting and nowhere else. And then it splits open and breaks that illusion instantly. But that's just looks. Ability-wise, Ennard has a very intimidating Rolodex of capabilities. For starters, Ennard's wiry, loose body allows him to fit into a human body, though he may shed some limbs in the process. That does mean, between this and his tight vent crawling, that he can get himself around. Ennard is strong. We don't know the exact strength, but in the private room he is able to overpower Michael Afton, so we're gonna go on robot, assume it can snap you in half strength. In Sister Location, it is able to mimic Elizabeth's voice just off of Circus Baby's memories alone, and not only that, they're able to make new lines to coerce Michael to give up. And not just mimicking voices. From the End of Night minigames, we know Ennard, an amalgam of a bunch of bots who likely don't know anything about current society and acting normal, are able to blend in almost perfectly in Michael's body. Neighbors wave and seem totally fooled, and it isn't until the body starts to decay that they become wary. Ennard was able to act the part until the costume failed. And let's be frank, ignoring what Funtime Freddy did to the body once he got in control, Ennard has the skill of anything inside of him at any given time. If Circus Baby is there, he is a manipulator. If Funtime Freddy is there, he is a sadistic killer. He is a little of everybody, which means anything they bring in with them, he has. But one of the most interesting parts of Ennard is his motives, which are a sharp contrast to both the aggressive animatronics before him and the major villain, William Afton. Most of the haunted animatronics' motives for murder are either out of revenge or confusion, and there's enough context clues to suggest that William Afton is their primary target. William Afton's motives are somewhat vague. The books give two motives. In the earlier books, it is a mix of envy and sadistic joy that leads William to kill, and he has built this persona through his spring-locked suit to do it. It empowers him. In later books, William's goal changes to immortality, looking for a way to become almost godlike. In the games, William Afton's goals are never directly clarified, but he does seem to take a thrill from what he does, so that may be his motive above all else. And he does seem to think a lot of himself. Circus Baby's motives were to escape and to get vengeance on the way out. But Ennard, being comprised of all of the Funtimes, has different motives. There's no greater plot, no greater plan, it's raw survival. And Ennard has shown that he's not against killing. There's not even any remorse. In fact, being made of the Funtimes who were built to kill, it is very likely Ennard too would still have that goal. But the difference is, there is no stopping point. It's not, take the kids from this party, don't get caught, return to the facility. There is nobody in control, there is nowhere to go. Ennard just indulges, and as long as he can escape to live again, nothing else matters. Especially with someone like Funtime Freddy in control. Imagine how deadly that amalgam would have been if it had actually been capable of pulling itself back together into a cohesive form like Baby did. That would be a huge threat. Unfortunately, Circus Baby seemed to have taken the last 2 brain cells with her when she got dumped. But let me clarify, as long as Ennard can rebuild and escape, it doesn't matter if there's a plan, because Ennard is built for adaptation. And he already knows of one surefire way to disappear for a few days. Another important thing to note would be how attached Ennard is to the many major characters in the series, and his tightly woven connections to the lore. He is the creation of Afton, a Frankenstein's monster, but not the one he intended to make. One that created itself and went off its initial design, and because of that, he had no control on it. He is the reason Michael Afton's life was truly over. Once he was scooped, there was no going back. There was no second chances. Ennard killed Michael, even if he was still alive. He is the most concentrated form of remnant. He literally is remnant, or specifically the kind of remnant that is possessed malleable metal. As much as remnant and agony is thrown around as a concept, he is a physical embodiment of at least one of these, and maybe the other. Everything about Ennard works for becoming a viable threat. Maybe not the main villain, but something lurking in the shadows that occasionally pops up and reminds you that it doesn't matter who's dancing in the rabbit suit now. There's something worse out there. Something who might not be looking to stage a huge horrific scene, but someone who will follow you home, gut you, and waddle around your corpse for a few days, if only to get close to vulnerable children. Almost makes the dreaded William Afton look like a kitty cat. One of those feral snaggletooth ones that always jumps out of closets in old horror films. You remember those. But alas, the potential of Ennard was cast away. And because of the goal to shut down the current story, for the most part, that meant Ennard got the guillotine before it really got good. But he had so much potential. And do you know how I know this? Because as of right now, one of the current major villains is another Ennard. Yes, I am talking about Mimic. Eleanor, the main villain of Fazbear Frights, and Mimic, the main villain of Tales from the Pizzaplex, who has just gotten worked into the games, as of Ruin, are descendants from Ennard in concept, with both sharing the body snatching, to a much, much lesser extent, and identity stealing, to a much greater extent, modus operandi. Eleanor is an animatronic who looks like Circus Baby, but who isn't. She is actually some sort of demonic creature of, or feasting on, agony, which is sort of haunted residual left behind when people suffer and die in traumatic ways. She uses illusion discs to create an illusion that makes her look like anything and anyone she wishes in an instant. She goes around and harasses random people to invoke suffering because that seems to power her, but what she actually really wants is remnant, and it seems to be her goal to get more of it. Mimic is the gun from Buckshot Roulette, and every time I make a grab at him, it blows up in my face. So let me handle this baby gently. As an actual description, Mimic is an endoskeleton who was created to mimic assigned actions. After being attacked by his creator, he was filled with rage and began to attack and kill others after being inadvertently given the command by a Freddy's employee to take animatronics apart. It's a somewhat more complicated story, but that's not important here. What's important is that Mimic does not use illusions. He is capable of fitting himself into any animatronic suit and mimicking voices. In fact, in Ruin, he can be heard actively splicing Gregory's voice to speak, something that becomes more noticeable the further you get into the DLC, and he even makes a Gregory costume out of old suit parts. The best comparison I can make between the two is that Eleanor is CGI and Mimic is practical effects. Eleanor might be flashier and might be able to make something that looks more vibrant easier, but when the cracks show, that believability is broken instantly. While the Mimic's efforts might be more identifiable, but feel more grounded due to being built in reality. And like I said, the Mimic and Eleanor are both identity stealers, not quite body snatchers, as the Mimic wears suits and Eleanor uses illusion discs to resemble humans. But we don't really need to talk about Eleanor anymore, as that's where the similarities between her and Ennard end. Well, no, at one point she sort of starts slithering in the dump in a way that somewhat resembles a wiry build, but that's mostly inconsequential. Eleanor's role more closely mirrors 4th Charlie's Circus Baby from the 4th Closet. Mimic is the one who resembles more of Ennard. There are a lot of similarities that you probably heard already. The only difference is Mimic tends to prefer fabric suits and Ennard likes his costumes extra rare. The mimicking and manipulation aligns for both. Well, and also, the other major difference would be that Mimic is either driven by a compulsion to mimic or anger from what happened in the past, while Ennard is a little more of a wild card. Yes, Circus Baby had anger and a traumatic past, one surprisingly similar to Mimic's in one iteration, but the rest of the bandmates, or at least one, doesn't seem so hung up on it. But Mimic does share that there's no end goal. At least there doesn't seem to be one now. Some folks have speculated that Mimic's trying to recreate Afton's family and Afton's goals. However, he might just be mimicking Afton, in which case he might start mimicking someone else and absorb their goals. And between these goals, there is raw survival. Adaptation, like Ennard. And if this wasn't enough, the Secret of the Mimic game is coming, and introducing an animatronic named Jackie who looks an awful lot like a blend of Ennard, Circus Baby, and the puppet, and has traits that sort of hints that it might be the Mimic. That, along with the books ending with Mimic as a jester, could suggest him once having a clownish persona or soon to take one on. This further tying with Ennard, as some have speculated that Ennard's mask might have come from Jackie. They do look similar, but personally, I'm still of the belief that originally this mask came from an old Circus Baby variation, but that might be changed in this upcoming game. But with the possibility of Mimic becoming the animatronic that was the previous iteration of Ennard, and then outliving him, and having so many of his traits, it seems like the mantle of Ennard has been picked up, and the torch is getting carried along by Mimic. By all accounts, Mimic is a step back in the direction that Ennard started, with the games already aiming to establish him as being a major person for some time, to get him back on the same ground Ennard had with his connections to multiple characters. This is technically the only way to get Ennard back now that he's gone. Through the Mimic. The Mimic is the new Ennard. But it is not the same. And this is not on Mimic. This could have been anyone. In fact, Mimic is replicating that feel of Ennard leagues better than what Eleanor was doing. Eleanor was all over the place. She was practically green screened into other scenes to establish herself as a villain. But I digress. The point is that we still didn't get exactly Ennard. Ennard was really a one-time thing. He came in Sister Location during a game that was establishing background for the villain of Fnaf, the Purple Man, and still stood out as a genuine secondary antagonist, something inhuman, scary in a whole new way, and breaking the conventions that the games before it had established in his and their story. And seeing sort of what Mimic's becoming for this series, it makes me regret what Ennard didn't get a chance to do. Because we could have had the body snatcher, animatronic infiltrator, untrustworthy clown character ages ago and could have utilized him before now. The Ennard we've established is an immortal threat. The thing could have shown up in Security Breach, not as a major villain, but just as a threat lingering in the basement for one section, and it would have been totally in character, or at least very believable. But at the time, Fnaf wanted something different, and that was to cut the old plots and move on, even if it meant having to slowly go through and replace every lost character with a semi-duplicate, to the point that theories about them being the old cast reborn have really taken off, and they do have some merit too. Ennard was a chance that was lost, and though we're trying to get it back, we won't get him back. But at least for one game, he was. They were, and it was great. And also we got this. Thank you for watching.